Fitzpatrick takes the snap, drops back, lobs it back right corner. Decker! He's got it! Touchdown! Eric Decker scores! And the Jets have won it in overtime!
This is the Jet Take with Ben Blessington and Kyle Fahey.
Welcome back to another episode of the Jet Take. I'm your host, Ben Blessington. I'm joined now by, as always, by my lovely co-host, Mr. Kyle Fahey. Kyle, how you doing, man?
So you do love me?
In a way. Way, yeah, just like a little brother type of thing. But, like, I don't want to play with you. But, like, I guess, push comes to shove, I guess I love you. Don't make any jokes. Let's just keep moving.
No. I wasn't making any jokes. I was going to say it's like, I'll say I hate you, but at the same time, like, somebody messes with you, like, I got you.
Yeah, I feel that. I feel that as well. And I also, like, I said this to Scott, but, like, I'm glad you're in my life because I like our debates and our arguments. It's really...
Yeah. We're equals who can just slap each other back and forth and then get right back up.
I love it. All right, let's hop to some news. Finally, we've made it through another offseason. It feels like this one went by pretty fast, I guess, but these offseasons just really, especially if your team doesn't go to the playoffs, I mean, really, we haven't seen the Jets in uniform since January, and in 2 weeks we'll be able to see them facing Atlanta. But in 2 days, they will report back to training camp, and I guess we'll start with the only sort of newsworthy things. There are a few that we'll talk about, and then we'll bring on a guest. But I guess we'll open up with the obvious. And honestly, this might not be news by the end of the podcast. Who knows? But Sam Darnold yet to agree to his rookie contract with the Jets. Kyle, what do you make of this? Are you worried about it? Is there anything? I know the deal is pretty much set in place. It all comes down to offset language. So that's really the only thing. Do you think it's as much of a holdout? Do you think it's just they haven't gotten to each other? I mean, the rookies were supposed to report yesterday, and he hasn't. But practice doesn't really start till Friday. Kyle, your thoughts on the situation? Yeah,
I don't worry about this at all. When it comes to, like, I don't think this is a holdout in any way, shape, or form. I think you nailed it on the head when you said offset language. This is just really like attorneys and team lawyers ironing things out right now and, making sure Darnold's side agrees with everything that's going on. But even if this was a holdout, we should all be on Sam Darnold's side because you should always be on the player's side when it comes to money because they really, they make a lot of money in comparison to regular people. But in comparison of sports, to like the NBA and stuff, even though the NFL is way more profitable, they don't make a lot of money. And like a guy like Julio Jones right now, just to ramble a bit, who is getting crucified on Twitter for not going to camp because he is the 17th highest paid wide receiver in the NFL, and he might be the best given the week.
Probably the best, right?
Production-wise,
Beckham, but I mean, as far as he is your prototypical number one wide receiver, and that.
Yes, but talent-wise, Odell has him. And I think production-wise, AB has him. But any given week, and Julio Jones can be the number one wide receiver. But nonetheless, he should be paid up there. So, no, I'm not worried about Darnold. I think he'll be there before practice starts. I don't think he'll miss a practice. This is just language getting, all the formalities getting ironed out. And this is something the Jets have been doing for a couple years now. Jamal Adams did a similar thing. Deron Lee, the year before. I think he held out actually for a little while. And then his mom, didn't
Darren Lee, I remember vaguely that Darren Lee and Ryan Fitzpatrick agreed to their contracts around a similar time. But yeah, I'm not really worried about it. It's not a big deal.
Darren Lee's mom, attacked you on Twitter,
I
right?
do remember that. I tweeted and I said, well, this deal's basically done. They're just, I literally just said what I said basically what I just said on the podcast. Like, the deal's pretty much done. It's just, they're just ironing out, like, little things. And she was like, well, that's not necessarily true. And that was before I even knew she was on Twitter. And I was like, wait, is this Darren Lee's mom tweeting at me? Good times. But now Darren's in front of the show. So good times, the memories. The other piece of
news, you just
say
friend of the show?
I did say friend of the show. I feel like that one can apply.
Yeah.
There are a few. I mean, to say
ASJ,
friend of the show versus somebody we've had on the show, there's a difference. We don't need to. Let's not flex here, Kyle. That's not a real
Oh, I'm flexing big time
Let's go to the other piece of news. Darrelle Revis signed a one-day contract with the Jets. He also retired. There's not really a question here, I guess, but I guess I can ask you, do you think he'll be a first ballot Hall of Famer? I know it didn't really end well, and some Jets fans have a sour taste in their mouth when it comes to Darrell. But personally, he was the first Jets player I grew up watching. He was my favorite player for a long time, and so it's kind of sad to see him go. But also, I'm happy that he was able to sign the 1 day deal with the Jets. Get out on a positive note. But your thoughts on Darrelle Revis retiring, his impact on the team, and then I guess the only question I can come up with about this whole situation is, do you think he's a first ballot Hall of Famer? Which is a pretty obvious answer.
I think the simple answer to that is yes, but I think the complex answer is that I wouldn't be shocked if he didn't make it first ballot because voters suck from time to time. But he should definitely be a first ballot Hall of Famer, best pure cover corner of all time. I don't care what you say about Deion Sanders. Deion Sanders, admittedly, is the better football player because he was also a wide receiver, punt returner, kick returner, running back from time to time. Basically, whatever you asked him to do, he
wide
did.
Receiver, not running back, but yeah.
If we're talking like in comparison to modern age offenses on where he was used and how they used him out of the backfield.
That was such a deflect right there.
That was the strongest deflect of my career.
What do you mean? No, he doesn't play running back. Well, you see if you look at how he was used. Kyle, what?
He was lined up. He definitely.
Yeah, he was lined up as a wide receiver.
He definitely played running back from time to time, Ben.
All right.
There are Madden running back cards for him. They're also wide receiver running. Nonetheless, Darrelle Revis, best cover corner of all time. I don't care what you say.
I agree with that. I do agree with that. I think if you look at pure cover corner from years, probably 2009, 2011, especially let's just look at 2009. I mean, that 2009 season, I don't think you're really going to find a better, season for a cornerback. Especially you look at who he was facing. I mean, he was facing Randy Moss and Andre Johnson and Chad Ochocinco and Calvin Johnson. I mean, he was facing some. No, he didn't face Calvin Johnson.
I love the tweet I saw. It's like, what was your best memory of Revis? And it was like making Chad Ochocinco go back to Chad Johnson. I thought that was like one of the funniest tweets in Jets Twitter history, and it didn't really get the love it deserved.
Fair enough. All right, last piece of news before we go to our guest.
I can't talk about how Revis affected my childhood, Ben.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I had like a whole thing prepared too. That's hurtful.
Way to tell me about it.
Yeah. When I was watching this yesterday, I sat down, I watched the press conference, and I listened to him talk, and overall weak questions from the reporters, but I guess, it's a retirement thing. They're not really going to give them, a lot. They played the highlight reel at the beginning, and I truly, started to realize that we as Jets fans witnessed something very special and did minimal with it, which is besides the point. But Darrelle Revis is one of the best football players of all time, is the best at his position of all time. And to be, as a young child who became a Jets fan, I guess, late because football didn't really get into my life till I was like 9 or 10 years old. When I saw Revis in his prime, that was somebody who, as a child, I didn't really know more than just as a reputation. And now I realize that dude was the definition of elite, the definition of a hard worker. And despite whatever the media said about him whenever he was holding out, despite the whole Hard Knocks thing and him looking like a dick, which I think he was acting like a dick at the time, but, go get the bag. Because if you're the best, get paid like the best at the end of the day. Darrelle Revis did so much for the Jets, and I feel like a lot of people hate him because of the contracts, and then because of going to New England and winning a ring. And then towards the end of his career with us, 2 years ago now, 2 years removed, where his performance were not the best, where you could see that it was a lack of trying a lot, and I think that's primarily because his body was wearing down and he was just mentally done with the game, because Revis was not Revis post-2015. I think that's fair to say. But we witnessed the best to ever do it, and I was honored to have him in green and white for the majority of his career, and when people think Darrelle Revis, they're going to think a New York Jet. So that's just what I wanted to say.
All right, let's go ahead and get to Joe
I'm not
Blewett.
crying. I swear to God, I'm not crying.
All right. Enough of that. And I just to add on to that, a trailblazer when it comes to negotiating contracts. And you mentioned earlier about players having more power versus the teams. Darrelle Revis was, not the first.
Revis did that for everybody.
I won't say he's the first, but he definitely did it more efficiently than a lot of players that we've ever seen in really any sport. So props to him. All right, let's go get to our guest of the night, Joe Blewett, member of TOJ, new member at TOJ, I guess. One of the best film review guys you're going to find on Twitter, starting his new podcast. He's had a few episodes out, so we're going to bring him on. Talk about the Jets, talk about the Jets on film. Our last episode, we had Jim Coburn on, who talked about the Jets analytics on the New York Jets. And now we're going to have some film breakdown on the New York Jets. So, Joe Blewett, welcome to the podcast. How's it going, man?
Doing well. How about you guys?
We're good. We're glad to have you on the show. I guess we'll start off just asking about your new podcast. You joined TOJ this past summer. So can you tell listeners a little bit about your podcast, the style of it, what's it called, where they can find it, et cetera?
Yeah, so previously, as you guys know, I was on Jet Nation Radio, switched over from them to join Turn on the Jets, and you can find it on YouTube because it is a YouTube show, so you can both listen to it, where you can go to the iTunes podcast app, wherever you listen to podcasts, and just type in TOJ space film space room, or you can go to YouTube and type in Turn on the Jets and just subscribe from there to the last two videos that we put up, and then we have like a playlist of TOJ Film Room, and it's basically a podcast where we're going to talk storylines. Like the last episode, we did top 25 players, which is always a fun show. The week before that, we basically recapped the entire Jets offseason, just so I can kind of throw my opinion out there. But we base a lot of our opinions on film. We show it on film, or I show it on film, where I don't just say, oh, that was a great play by whoever, Quincy Nunwa. Okay, well, why was it a great play? What leverage did he have? Did he attack the DB's leverage? What kind of route did he run? What was improper about the route, even though he won the reps? So we're going to tell you every single thing that you need to know to really watch the game and be more educated about it. Next week, we're having Mark Schofield on to break down the Jets quarterbacks. The week after that, we're having Eric McMillan on, who's a Jets, Pro Bowler and Defensive Rookie of the Year, to break down the secondary. And I believe the week after that, we're having Marcus Coleman on to break down, another Jets defensive back, to break down the Jets wide receivers and tight ends. So if you really want to learn the game, the nitty-gritty, instead of the, hot take crap where people don't really know stuff, then come listen to TOJ Film Room.
I think it's definitely, if you want to be a smarter fan, definitely check out your work, not just your podcast, but you do some great film reviews on Twitter and stuff that you've been posting for quite a while now, and I've always made sure to check them out. Speaking of some of those reviews, let's hop into some Jets talk. I guess we'll start out with the 2017 Jets. And you mentioned, people talk about, well, this guy was a great play by Quincy Nunwa or whatever. Some things that don't get noticed by fans. And with this question, I guess we'll talk about players. This came up when you were talking a lot about Steve McClendon. But is there a player who is just generally that you, after watching a lot of the 2017 Jets on film, is there a player that you just think is just very underrated by Jets fans and by the NFL? And by other NFL fans? Steve McClendon was a guy who came to mind as a guy who really produced, and nobody ever talks about him. He's almost an afterthought, even to Jets fans. But were there any players like that come to mind when I bring up underrated Jets on the 2017 roster?
Just on the 2017 roster? Well, you mentioned McClendon. I've talked about him plenty, but since we're not going to McClendon, I think another guy in the middle on the defensive line, it's not going to be like sexy names. I'm not going to say Darren Lee, even though I know you guys are a friend with him, but I'm not going to say that. I think Mike Pennell's another guy who's really well, sorry. It is what it is. But, Pennell's another guy, 6'3", 335 pounds, 340 pounds. He's a massive guy. You can't move him in the run game. Really good anchor and base, physical, violent type of player, plays to the whistle. Plays with a really good bend to his upper body, plays a good extension as well. He's obviously not a guy who a lot of fans know about because he's not going to get you, 8, 9, 10 sacks. He's not one of those type of players, but just in terms of being in on short yardage situations and stuffing the interior of the offensive lineman, he's a really good player who I think was overlooked, as well as McClendon. Another guy, I guess, on the defense would be David Bass. It's not a sexy name, but I do think he makes the roster. I think he had some productive pass rushing snaps in 2017. And if I'm going to offense, offense is kind of hard. I would say Jermaine Kearse is a little bit better than people think he is. He's not a guy like with Julio Jones type traits or speed or height or, jumping ability or anything like that. But he's a really technical route runner, guy who's going to use some savvy veteran moves to get open, attack leverages properly, run really crisp routes and things like that. So those are a couple of players who I think were overlooked in 2017.
And Joe, on the flip side of that question, are there guys on this roster that could be looked at as overrated, specifically by Jets fans? Because we know, as we all know, I guess, Jets fans tend to see things through some green-tinted goggles, and I know I'm victim to that as well. But are there some players that you think that Jets fans are severely overrating when you compare their opinion to the film that you're actually breaking down?
Yeah, so two guys, and it's specifically on defense. Robbie Anderson first came to mind, but even if he's not a well-rounded receiver necessarily at this point in his career, he's still, if not one of the best deep threats in the entire league. He's just fantastic at getting open deep, and a lot of that has to do with his speed, but people don't really recognize he actually has a pretty good release off the line of scrimmage when he's not getting pressed. So he's improving, steadily throughout the last couple of years. In terms of defense, I think Marcus May was a little bit overrated. I don't buy the whole hype I don't buy the whole hype because I watched the film, but he was not as good or close to as good as Jamal Adams in 2017. There were multiple times, one time versus Cleveland, one time I believe versus the Saints, one versus the Falcons, the set three that come to mind, where he was beat deep. Whether it be he was looked off or he fell for play action, the ball wasn't thrown to his zone and what he was responsible for. But there's at least 4 or 5 times last year he could have got burnt for a touchdown. The ball just wasn't delivered there, whether it be the quarterback missed it or there's another guy more wide open. So I think Marcus May was a little bit overrated, and the guy who was a friend of the podcast, I'm not going to say his name, is also a little bit overrated. I think he has some tough sledding to do this year in Lee. I hope he doesn't listen, but if he does, it is what it is. I think a guy in Kevin Minter who played with Bulls in Arizona, if he regains his 2015 form, he might be nipping at Lee's heels for some playing time, even though Lee did get the play calling responsibilities on the defense, which is a little bit odd to me. But I think Lee and May would be my two guys.
Yeah, and you kind of touched on it. My next question was talking about Robbie Anderson. I guess we'll hop into some receiver talk because that's personally the position I'm most excited to watch outside of obviously Sam Darnold. I'm excited to see the dynamic duo of Enunwa and Robbie Anderson return. We really haven't had, Enunwa had his breakout year in 2016, then he gets hurt, and Robbie has his in 2017. So this is the first year where they both had breakout years. They're both ready to contribute. So I'm excited to see them. We'll start with Robbie Anderson. And you kind of touched on it, and I was going to ask you, do you think after watching the film that he is really only a one-trick pony? And you kind of answered that, and you think that he is. Do you think that he has room to grow? Because I think there is some concern about, his frame, maybe 6'3", 190. Maybe all he is going to be a deep threat guy. And as you said, if he is that, he's one hell of a deep threat guy at that. But do you think he is a one-trick pony, and do you think he could, potentially, especially this year, shift their perspective and change his traits as a wide receiver into a guy who can go over the middle at times or who can run other routes outside of a deep route or a curl or a comeback?
Yeah, well, he improved from his first year with the Jets with catching the ball. Now, in terms of like his weaknesses, he does run some rounded routes. His footwork is a little bit sloppy. Going into his breaks and his routes, he doesn't have the necessary leg power, and this is another frame thing too. People think frame, upper body, but his legs don't have the power to really burst out of the top of routes. So you see that a lot, and he also comes into those routes a little bit high. So he can improve in some things in his route running, whether it be bursting towards the cornerback on routes that are back breaking, which he doesn't really do. He kind of lets the defensive back feel comfortable, but when you're coming to the top of your route, at first you're gonna burst off the line of scrimmage in your gather phase. You're gonna want those two, actually it could be 1, 2, 3, 4 step or stop steps at the top of the route. He doesn't really burst at the defensive back to make the defensive back feel threatened. So he can improve on some things in terms of route running. But do I think he's going to be a guy like, whoever it may be, Antonio Brown running routes where he's really shifty, really good at hand-footing at the line of scrimmage and things like that, or even a guy like Julio Jones who at the top of his route when he's about to break, he really uses his power to lean into the defensive back to create separation at the top of the route? No, I don't necessarily think that. But at the same time, even, people think, oh, well, he's just a deep threat or he just has speed, means he only catches balls 40 yards down the field. It's not necessarily true, because if you are that deep threat and you have a decent release off the line of scrimmage, cornerbacks are going to flip their hips to run early because you are so freaking fast. So he has the ability to, even if he just runs a decent curl route, comeback route, in route, whatever it may be, if you can improve on that a little bit, it'll become a lot more effective where because of that deep speed, he has a little bit more breathing room on it underneath routes. So I think he does have room to improve because it's not just the frame and the legs and the size of the legs and the power in the legs. There's some technique stuff he can clean up. And, listen, he's going through his third year with the Jets. He's still in an NFL weight program, so maybe he gains a couple pounds and he gets some more technique work. I think he could become more than just a deep threat, but, he's not going to be like a technician, like, even like Eric Decker and running routes and things like that.
Yeah, and the other guy that I mentioned was Quincy Enunwa. And I think after 2016, a lot of people talked about him as, maybe he's a baby Brandon Marshall, or, that he could be a number one possession type of receiver as he develops. But I also think that the argument could be made that he is more of a slot type of receiver. I know he was utilized as an H-back in 2015. So my question to you is kind of, how do you see him as a receiver? Do you see him more as the number one possession guy, or do you see him more as a guy who's going to dominate over the slot, or over the middle, in the slot? Just how do you see him fitting into this Jets offense? And then when you factor in a guy like Jermaine Kearse, I was just trying to get at, how do you think all these wide receivers should be utilized, but specifically in Enunwa, because he's a guy that you could really take either way. I think it seems like Jets fans are pretty split on the way he should be used.
Yeah, see, the good thing about Quincy Enunwa and his play is you don't have to categorize him in any single, X receiver, Z receiver, H-back, because that's limiting his game. The great thing about Quincy Enunwa is of how well-rounded he is. He could be the X receiver and run a post to draw safety coverage. He could be a Z receiver and go over the middle and take a shot in the mouth from a linebacker. He could be an H-back and cut a guy like I believe it was on film I was watching. Who's the Cardinals defensive? Chandler Jones. He's cutting him, or crack block, a linebacker coming from the slot. So he could do everything. So that's the great thing about him, is he doesn't need to be, labeled as one specific thing, because you're limiting his game severely, because he could do a lot of things just based on a height-weight-speed ratio and a willingness to really compete and take shots from linebackers where, like I said, he's not afraid to block a linebacker, take a shot in the mouth from a linebacker. He has a speed to run away on, whether it be like a bubble screen or a smoke route or even, an end around. So he's really, really versatile, and he does pretty much everything. And obviously, he can improve on some things, and that's some technicality type stuff. His release needs work. I think he needs some work at the top of his routes as well. But that was one of his biggest problems coming out of when he came out of Nebraska a couple of years ago. So he's still a young player, and he still has some work to do. But just in terms of, like I said, a speed, weight, height ratio, he could do everything. So I don't feel comfortable really labeling him as, a slot or a Z or an X.
Joe Blewett, last time we spoke, well, it's been a while, or last time you were talking about me, you compared me to Buster Screen, which I think is a little unfair. I think Morris Claiborne is much more comparable, but I want to talk about corners, since we're tying things in here. We got to have the parallels. Obviously brought in Tremaine Johnson. I know there's been a lot of talk about him being a top 5 corner. A lot of Jets fans are really hyped on him. Tell us what you think of him.
Tremaine Johnson, I knew I had a feeling you were going to bring up the Buster Screen thing. Obviously, we've had some not like Twitter wars. We've had some good joke sessions with us in the Rock Pile Report and Kyle Smith and stuff like that. So I always got to bang on you when I can. It's pretty funny. Yeah. But Tremaine Johnson, I think he's in that 10 to 15 range. I don't think he's a top 5 cornerback. I think he's more of a bend but don't break type of cornerback. He's like a rich man's Morris Claiborne. In terms of that, where he doesn't really get beat deep too much, but he gives up some short stuff. But I like him. He's both effective in man press coverage. He's effective in off coverage. He's effective in soft shoe press coverage, which is a different type of press coverage. Obviously, he's really effective in aggressive press coverage as well. He has really good hips. He has good burst. He's smart. He's able to react to receivers' routes, sometimes even before they start to make the break. So he's good at reading the quarterback's drops and reading the body language of the receiver, whether it be their hips dropping or their body starts to come more upright, so he knows that the receiver is going to break, so he'll start to break on it. And another thing I think that's really overlooked about actually the three Jets corners in general, and I think that's something that's going to actually help this defense, which I haven't heard anybody bring up, is the Jets have problems. They had problems in the past with, outside zone, wide zone, mid-zone type of runs or toss plays, whatever it may be, runs to the outside of the tackles, because the Jets didn't have really fast outside linebackers who can try to set a strong edge. And Jordan Jenkins is decent, but he's not the most speedy guy in the world. The Jets have three corners, in their nickel look, which they're going to play a lot, who actually can tackle really well and set a really good edge. So I think the Jets are kind of in a good place with their corners, because Buster Skrine, say what you want about him, I think pound for pound, he's probably the strongest guy in this entire team in terms of just throwing shots at, receivers who are 6'3", 215 pounds. Do I like him as a player? No, not necessarily, but he's a good player in the run game. Tremaine Johnson's fantastic in the run game, and Morris Claiborne's pretty damn good in the run game too. So I think the Jets are kind of offsetting the weaknesses they have at outside linebacker with the corners who are going to come up and make plays in the run game too. So that's another positive thing about Tremaine Johnson and his play. In terms of weaknesses, I think he opens his hips too much and stuff like that. Sometimes he'll look into the backfield too soon instead of sticking with the wide receiver, which can get him hurt at times. But overall, I think he's a really, really good corner. Like I said, top 10 to 15, which for cornerback nowadays is really, really good. Obviously, there's a ton of good corners in the NFL, so I'm really, really happy with the signing. And people might overreact a little bit to the money he was doled out, but with any position, especially like the main five positions, left tackles, corners, outside linebackers, quarterbacks, obviously, those type of guys. If you're above average, top 15 type of guy, you're going to get the next biggest contract, because if that team doesn't pay it to you, somebody else will. So don't freak out over the contract money. Anybody would have to sign to that, and he's worth it. The Jets have $100 million going into free agency next year too. So
let's talk about Buster Skrine, because obviously fans, all of us, I guess here, I think we can all single out each other here, have been highly critical of Buster Skrine from time to time. I think last year was his best season as a Jet, at least, from first glance. I think that's fair to say. Obviously, a lot has been invested into the cornerback position, not only in front of Buster on the depth chart, but behind him. Obviously, the draft pick of Perry Nickerson from years previous. We have Justin Burris, Rashad Robinson, who is now suspended for the first 4 games, but we traded a 5th-round pick for him last year. What's it going to be looking like for competition behind Buster Skrine? Because we hear a lot of people saying Skrine's got to go. Oh, we just drafted Nickerson, who I personally don't think is a good fit in the slot, or at least the role that Skrine has been playing so far. So what's the competition looking like for Skrine? Because I think he is the weakest link in our starting secondary or our package secondaries, and hasn't really been worth the money.
Yeah, to be honest, I don't think that he really has too much competition at this point. I don't think Roberts is going to be able to. I don't think he's a slot type of corner. And I think Nickerson, what happens with that is people look at Pro Football Focus numbers, and whatever that stat was, he was retweeting after the draft, whatever completion percentage or pass deflections, whatever it may be. And I looked at that. I was like, okay, that's pretty impressive. And I actually went back and watched Nickerson because, like I said, I'm doing that show with Eric McMillan next week, and I have to be prepared for that. I was watching his film, and honestly, I went into it thinking I was going to be impressed. I wasn't too impressed with Nickerson. I think he has some good athletic ability, but in terms of his size, like 175, really, really light guy. He can't really. He's willing. He's a willing tackler, but I don't see any way he's going to get past slot receivers in the NFL. Whether it be like a Danny Amendola, Juliet Edelman type, or even if it was like a Jeremy Curley type who could block. But I don't think he has the power to stand up in the run game, and also in the pass game too. He opens up his hips really, really early. He plays really high into his back pedal. He's honestly weak. It is what it is. He just doesn't have the ability to compete with receivers who are going to use their body and their frame at the top of their routes in the slot. So I think he's going to have his, he's going to take room to grow. He's going to take years to grow. He's not a guy who's just going to come in and, on Madden, I drafted this guy, 97 speed. He's going to be my starting, slot corner. It's not that type of thing. He's going to take some years to develop, coming from a smaller school in Tulane. So that's not competition for Screen this year. This is Screen last year in his contract. Roberts isn't much competition. I think Rashad Robinson, he only played like 20 snaps last year, but he's actually pretty interesting on film. Really quick hips, really fluid, really good burst out of just a standstill. So I think he has some interesting athletic ability too, but obviously with all the trouble he's got in the offseason, whatever he did, I think he ate like edibles or something like that, so he's suspended, so that hurts his chances. But I think he's the most interesting competition for Screen in the slot, but he's not going to be back until Game 5, which might mean the Jets just might cut him outright anyway. Other than that, Justin Burris, I don't really have a lot of hope from him. I'm not gonna lie there. Jeremy Clark's another interesting guy, but he's not a slot guy. I think Derek Jones is good as gone, maybe to the practice squad if he's lucky. But just in terms of pure competition for Screen, I don't really think there is much. And if there's any, it's Rashad Robinson when he comes back week 5.
So how many corners do you think we're going to carry this year?
It's most likely going to be 6. I could see 7, but I would say 6. And obviously you have Tremaine Johnson, you have Claiborne, you have Screen, you're going to carry Nickerson. Now it's hard with the suspension. I guess without the suspension, I'll take Rashad Robinson out of it. But I do think he might come back after it. But with him out of it now, you're going to have Roberts as your 5th. And then for my 6th guy, I would take Jeremy Clark. I like Jeremy Clark coming out of Michigan, and just in terms of a height, weight, speed type of deal as well. Really interesting characteristics with really long arms, and when he gets those long arms on you in press, it's pretty hard to move at times, especially when he does shuffle his feet at the line of scrimmage, which sometimes he struggles with in his first phase of his coverage. But I think those are the 6 guys if I had to pick. And then if Roberts or Clark don't ball out, then I think Rashad Robinson might come back. But at the same time, he could be cut too. So we'll see what happens with Robinson. It's a pretty interesting situation.
Okay, so I released the depth chart thing on TOJ, not to plug my own thing, but I had them carrying 5, with Darryl Roberts being the 5th. You already named the 4 that are pretty much solid in there. And then I had us cutting Burris, cutting Robinson, because I don't think they're going to carry him, suspended list. We have the rights to him. That's how we would carry him for the 4 games. And then Sinkfield, who honestly I've never even heard of. Casey Rogers' kid will get out. And then I think on the practice squad we'll keep Clark, who I did like coming out of Michigan. I actually had I think, Ben, what I have on him, a 4th or 5th round. I remember I was really hyped when we got him, but the ACL tear really limited him there towards the end. I don't know how the recovery is doing. So Clark, Jones, and Coleman on the practice squad, but I feel like that's not good enough, but I also feel like besides Rashad Robinson, none of these guys are good enough to carry on the roster.
Yeah, the thing with only carrying 5 is when you're playing so much nickel looks and dime looks, you need backups. 1, just in case your guys get injured, and 2, if your guys are getting tired throughout the game, you need to sub out guys. Look how low Burris was on the depth chart last year, and we saw him a decent amount of snaps. So I think for corner, especially when you like to play a lot of nickel and dime looks in the NFL now, obviously with it being such a big passing game, I think they're going to carry Clark, who, like you said, I think without that injury, he might be a 3rd-round pick. 6'3", 220, 32-inch arms is good. Like I said before, his arms really help him in press. He has pretty good ball skills. He has good size for a corner, being 6'3", 220. He's a little bit clunky at times, but still sets a pretty good edge, can tackle. But it also with that, it comes along with some weaknesses, which he's a little tight. He doesn't bend his legs in press, change of direction, speed, things like that. But I think they're going to carry him as a 6. I think he has some interesting traits that the Jets obviously like if you just look at their signings. One with with the draft too. Obviously with Clark, with Derek Jones, long arms. They get Justin Burris, who has long arms. They have Johnson, who has long arms. They have Morris Claiborne, who has long arms. Even a guy like Jamal Adams has long arms. So I think they like DBs with long arms who are bigger guys, and I think Clark finds a way to stick, because of that, and also because of, like we both said, that his game in Michigan was pretty solid before that injury. So.
Okay, so just quickly, how many safeties do you think we're going to carry then? How do you think we're going to balance that? Because I feel like that's a lot.
I would say 4. That's at least in my opinion. And then, obviously, if we're going to we can do this at a different time, or you can do it whenever you want. But a 53-man roster construction, it's hard because the Jets actually have some talent now. Now, are they a Super Bowl contender? No, but they do have some talent where, there were years we were fighting over David Nelson, Clyde Gates, Salim Hakeem, and stuff like that. So it becomes a little bit harder now. But I think the Jets do carry 4 safeties, and that's obviously with the two second-year guys. I really, really like J.J. Wilcox's game. I really do. He's an interesting guy to me. I think you're going to see a good amount of him. He's an all-around type of guy with some good athleticism, and a guy who's also going to smack you in the mouth when he gets the chance to. So I think he makes it. And then my thing is I like Rontez Miles in terms of his aggression and his ability on special teams, and he's really good in the run game, but he just cannot play in coverage. He gets lost in coverage consistently. So I think from a pure football standpoint, I think it's J.J. Wilcox and Terrence Brooks as your 2 backups if I had to choose, now before going to training camp and seeing how that all plays out. So.
Okay. I have us carrying Rontez just for special teams, but that's the same. All right, Ben, you can go now. I know Ben's been chomping at the bits now.
Well, the way we structured this interview really went heavy with my questions first, then heavy with Kyle's questions. We did not balance it out that well, but I'm glad to hear the insight on our training camp roster predictions as we head into it in a few days. Now, Joe, back to some of the film here. I wanted to know, was there a defensive look in particular you thought that the Jets had more success in? I know that some view it as your base 3-4 defense and whatever. I know Topple is a big fan of the nickel, but as a guy who's pretty much watched every defensive snap that the Jets had last year, did you notice a particular formation that had success with this Jets defensive unit?
Oh yeah, no, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. I've watched every single Jets defensive snap probably 5-6 times over. I've done about 30 to 40 player reviews just in terms of watching guys at least a couple of games just to see their game. I think obviously it is a nickel look, and primarily the Jets were, and obviously there was some cover 2, cover 4 in there. I think the Jets are from most snaps they were a middle of the field close type of team, which is cover 1, cover 3 type of team. And in those cover 1 looks, they were able to drop Jamal Adams into the box as a weak side linebacker, and I think that was what was most effective because. One, I think Marcus May, even though he did have some trip-ups in 2017, I do think he has better range than people thought he did coming out of Florida, which is something that personally surprised me. So allowing him to free roam as a cover 1 safety was good for his game. Also in cover 3 too, when a corner's on the outside and a cover 3 are going to filter in the the wide receivers to the outside, where a cover 1, the corners are going to play with inside leverage, and in a cover 3, you're going to play with outside leverage and push him into the middle because he's going to be there in the middle. He has that deep, the middle third responsibility, so he's going to be there. Where a cover 1, he's able to roam around a little bit more with what he sees. So I like that look, those 2 looks for him, and also with Jamal Adams. Now, this is not to say that he can't cover. He definitely can cover, but having him either, whether it be on a tight end or on a slot receiver, which I think people said he was on slot receivers a lot, which I didn't see it at all. Didn't really cover slot receivers. But just having him near the line of scrimmage, whether it be in a hook zone, a curl to flat zone, or even a robber type look, when he's near the line of scrimmage, that's when he's going to flourish because of just one, his aggressiveness, his film study. He's able to recognize keys and jump the ball and make plays on running backs in the backfield. So having Jamal Adams in a intermediate zone, I think, is best for both the pass game and the run game. And obviously, having nickel look, just the fact that you're getting one of these linebackers off the field as well. I'd rather have Buster Screen than some of the linebackers that we have, and people frequently crap on Buster Screen, and I get it. He's a below average corner. At times he's just outright bad, but there was a couple games last year, I would say 5 or 6 games where he actually did play pretty well. So I'd rather have him in there than a guy, like a David Bass or a Josh Martin or Lorenzo Malden or Dylan Donahue. So I think nickel's their best look, cover 1, cover 3, with Jamal Adams playing the intermediate zone, like I said, whether it be a curl to flat or a robber type of look.
Yeah, good stuff. And you mentioned the weakness at the linebacker position, and obviously you're probably talking more towards the outside linebackers. However, the inside linebacker, as you mentioned a little bit earlier, there's definitely some holes that you think could be addressed. But a guy that they brought in this offseason, Avery Williams, and I wanted to talk about him. How do you think he impacts this defense? He's filling in for Demario Davis, who had a very good year last year, in my opinion. I thought he did a lot of good things for the Jets, but I'm a big fan of this Avery Williamson signing because I think he can do a lot of the things that DeMario did and more, and plus he's a lot younger. So your thoughts on the Avery Williamson acquisition?
Yeah, this is my favorite signing. And not to say like impact, obviously Tremaine Johnson being a corner and making so much money is going to make a little bit more of an impact than an Avery Williamson will. But Avery Williamson, I believe he's about 26 years old. So like you said, he's 3 years younger than Demario Davis was. And listen, Demario Davis was really good last year. I don't know if he was a Pro Bowler. I'm not too into the awards and stuff like that. But if he wasn't, he's a borderline Pro Bowl. Okay, yeah. So he's a borderline Pro Bowl type of player. He was really, really close to it. I didn't like Demario Davis in his previous stint with the Jets or even with the Browns. But the thing with that is you're showing 1 year of production. Are you really going to be able to replicate that? So that's a question one. Two, you're 29 years old. So that's another question. Why not bring in a guy who's younger and has some ability? I really like Avery Williamson. Like I said, he's really aggressive in attacking gaps. He'll stand up an offensive lineman, whether it be a tackle, a guard, or a center, right in their tracks and make a tackle. There's a play in the Cleveland Browns game where I think they're running like an outside zone. The guard can't get in position to take on Avery Williamson, and the guard almost literally jumps on Avery Williamson's back. And not only does Avery Williamson stand up and is able to take an offensive lineman jumping on his back, he also makes a sharp cut with the offensive lineman on his back. So the guy's extremely strong. He's another punchy in the mouth type of guy. He played both Mike and Will. He was extra cover and man. He played hook zones. He blitzed from every single gap on the field. He covered tight ends. And I think he covered better than people give him credit for. And I think that's another statistic thing. That's why statistics are way too overrated at times, where people look, okay, well, he didn't play on third down. He must be not a good coverage linebacker. When you watch the film with Tennessee, I watched every one of his snaps in 2017 or 2016, whatever, or 2017. The Titans would frequently take out their linebackers, whether it be him or Woodyard, and put in Jonathan Cyprien in their role. So, no, they weren't taking him out for a linebacker who's better in coverage. They were taking him out for a safety. It's like the Jets taking out whoever. Lee is not a good example because he's not good in coverage. But, they take out a linebacker and put a safety in for it to fill that role. So, yeah, well, it is what it is. So I like I said, I like him. He's going to stand up lineman. You're not going to be able to block him with tight ends. He's pretty solid. Plays a good leverage. Plays with a good base. Really, really strong. Always going to give you 100%. And obviously he does have his weaknesses as well. But just in totality, he's my favorite signing of the Jets offseason. I really like the value they got out of the contract and the value they're getting out of this player who I think by the end of the year, Jets fans are going to be talking him up and saying, oh, yeah, I really liked him and stuff like that, but when really they weren't too sure. But Jets fans are going to like this guy, I promise.
All right, Joe, there's obviously one player that we have to talk about, and we have to he's probably the most important player on this Jets roster. Definitely, what am I saying, probably. Sam Darnold. I know you did a breakdown on his USC tape. I have
no idea who you were talking about.
Really, Kyle? Yeah, we're talking about Buster Skrine. All right.
I don't know.
First question overall, just your first impact on his positives and negatives while watching his film at USC.
Yeah, so I did extensive breakdown of 2017 seasons last year at USC. And I did like a 75-play review on my Twitter, so if you really want to get into the nitty-gritty with that, you can watch. And then next week, like I said, with Schofield, we're going to get into the film. In terms of strengths, I have like a list of strengths. Character, he finds a way to make plays. He moves in the pocket really well, creates out of thin air, deadly accurate on the run. Sometimes he's better at throwing on the run than he is with a good base. So that's super impressive. Obviously, in the NFL, he's going to get some pressure, especially with the Jets' offensive line. Some of the anticipation throws that he makes as a 20-year-old are just outstanding. He's very accurate, he's accurate even with bad mechanics, which is a good thing. Now, do I want those bad mechanics? No. Obviously, I don't want the bad mechanics. But he's not one of those quarterbacks who, when he shows those bad mechanics, it's always linked to a bad throw. He's a quarterback, and I'm not comparing him stylistically at all to Phillip Rivers, but, minus the the poor throwing motion and things like that, or some issues with mechanics, he is able to deliver the ball accurately and with some zip, even with poor mechanics. That's good. Now, if he can fix those mechanics, he'll be even more accurate and even more strong in his game and delivering the ball. So I'm impressed by that. He stands tall in the pocket. He's willing to get hit in the face. He has some ice in his veins, a couple of big comebacks in late game situations in 2017, which you want to see, and it's especially impressive for a guy who's only 21 years old at this moment in time. He also keeps his eyes downfield no matter what's happening around him. That was one of Baker Mayfield's big problems, was where there's pressure coming around him, or even when he thought pressure was coming around him, he would drop his eyes a little bit too much. Sam Darnold might drop his eyes for half a second to see where he's trying to go, or to find a lane to run through, or where to shuffle his feet or where to hitch. But he always keeps his eyes downfield, which I really, really like. But in terms of something, and there's a lot more, trust me, there's a lot more strengths I can go through. Pocket awareness, he'll look off safeties, he'll isolate 1-versus-1 opportunities pre-snap, really good shoulder torque. He has that it factor, but I'm not going to go through all of them. But in terms of his weaknesses, there's 3 major ones that he has to fix. One is ball security. He's too loose with the ball in the pocket. He frequently runs around with the ball like a loaf of bread, holding in one hand, where you want the ball obviously tight to your chest or your elbows tucked to your side to have the best ball security you can possibly have. Number 2 is his aggressiveness, where there's times where it's not where he's making a poor read. It's not like, and I saw this with Lamar Jackson, I saw it with all the other quarterbacks, where it's a slant flat concept, which is pretty much the simplest concept you can do, like a curl flat. It's easy, and anybody knows how to run a flat route and a slant, and it's an in and out read. It's really, really simple. It's quick developing. Where they wouldn't see a linebacker creeping up to jump the flat or the slant. And we saw that, I believe it was Baker Mayfield, maybe versus Texas. I forget what team it was, but I saw it with Baker Mayfield. Sam Darnold didn't make those interceptions a lot, or have those interceptions on these simple concepts. What his problem was he would see an underneath defender and an over top defender collapsing onto the wide receiver, and he would think, screw it, I can make this throw. And he would throw it in there and have to be absolutely perfect to make that ball fit in there, and the ball just didn't fit in there. So it's not a lack of understanding defense. It's just he's too aggressive in his game at times. And then the third biggest weakness is his mechanics, and it mostly shows up with some balls that don't have the most accuracy on them, because he steps in the bucket a lot, which basically stepping in the bucket means, with that front foot, you want that front foot driving towards where you want the ball to go, and he would frequently step towards the sideline, which obviously with the ball wanting to go forward and your foot going towards the sideline, you're not creating accuracy, and you're not creating optimal power that you can through that throw by driving through your front, through your back foot to your front foot with that weight transfer. So those are his biggest weaknesses, but I think those are correctable things to hone in that aggressiveness and fix some mechanical type things. But he had that it factor. Some of those plays he made every single game that the other quarterbacks just didn't have, in my opinion, and that's why he was my number 1 quarterback, especially at 21 years old, doing that stuff with not as strong of a supporting cast as Baker Mayfield had, or even a Josh Rosen had. So he's my number 1 quarterback. I really like him. I'm really, really excited for him to play, if he does play this year.
Okay, so speaking of playing, obviously he currently has, I think, 2 capable individuals in front of him who, Josh McCown, 1, being paid to be a mentor. Basically, I think we can all accept that as why he was paid so much this year. And Teddy Bridgewater, who top 15 when he was healthy, but we don't know what his health is like. So what is it going to take for Darnold to come into training camp when this contract thing gets resolved and he steps into training camp? What is he going to have to do to start immediately? Because a lot of fans want it, but he has people in front of him who are likely better and give the Jets a better chance to win immediately. So what is Sam going to have to do?
Well, so the thing with Bridgewater is an interesting situation because, like you said, 2015 he played pretty well under North Turner, and he was a guy who was considered, maybe top 15, maybe in that 50, I would say more like 15 to 20 range, just because of some of his athletic, not like dysfunctions, but he had some kind of like ceilings to his game where he didn't have a strong arm, he didn't have really any elite athletic traits. But still, like you said, at this point, Is he better than Darnold? Most likely, but that's also a big factor depending on his leg and all that stuff. I think he's more of a guy who might play in the preseason, maybe the first couple of games, and get traded. So I think he's not really. I really do think he'll be traded. Josh McCown was obviously solid last year. 18 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. He was decent. But with Darnold, with me, obviously, like any rookie, you're going to have to understand the playbook. You're going to have to have good chemistry with your wide receivers and things like that. And a lot of people say, oh, just throw the kid into the fire. But the problem with throwing the kid into the fire, which is good in some situations, if you're throwing a kid into the fire because you want to see him kind of, whether it be able to take the pressure or to be able to read concepts on the fly, or to be able to scramble out of the pocket, or being able to keep your eyes downfield, you have to learn that stuff by playing. You can't learn that stuff from sitting on the sideline. But one of Sam Darnold's biggest problems that I just mentioned a couple minutes ago with you guys is his mechanics. And the problems with mechanics is if you're, let's say, 90% fixed on your mechanics, if there is a percent, you can put a percentage on it. Let's just say 90% fixed going into your first game. If if crap hits the fan, I'll stay away from swear words. I don't know how your show works. I know you guys probably curse and stuff too. But
No. You can go ahead and say what you want.
No, well, I'll say crap for now. The terminology I'm using. If crap hits the fan and your mechanics are not completely fixed, what's going to happen is you're going to revert back to what you know with those poor mechanics, and then you're not necessarily starting off from square one, but it's going to be harder for you to fix those mechanics. So you need to fix those mechanics full out before you throw him in there. And there are examples. People might say, oh, yeah, well, Carson Wentz had some mechanical issues his first year, which is true. He tended to basically his mechanical issues his first year was he tended to disconnect his hips from his arms, whereas his hips would come forward and rotate forward before his arm, which then would rip the ball forward and overthrow receivers. So there are cases where it can be done. But listen, the Jets aren't winning the Super Bowl this year. They're not going to the playoffs, in my opinion, no matter how well one of the quarterbacks play. Hey, it is what it is. So why are you going to throw this kid into the fire if you don't necessarily need to? And it's a really cliche saying. It kind of sounds stupid, but it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. We don't need to see him the first 4 weeks if he doesn't need to play. Let him get his mechanics fixed. Let him get into the playbook. Let him really have a great understanding of all the checks and things he can do at the line of scrimmage before you just throw him out there because you're a Jets fan. You want to go see him, week 2 against the Dolphins. So if he shows he can fix those mechanics, he knows the playbook, he has good chemistry with his wide receivers, he should start. But that's a big if at this point. So I'm fine with him sitting. It is what it is,
You don't think the Jets can make the playoffs this year, even if the quarterbacks play well?
No, I don't. So maybe they can. There are situations like when the Jets went to the playoff, they didn't go to the playoffs. I actually should know that. I went to the last game against Buffalo in 2015. It was like negative 15 degrees out. Yeah, it sucked. It really did suck. But it could happen. I'm never going to say never, but if I had to predict the Jets' record right now, I would say 7-9, 8-8. They still have some holes. And they have some holes at big spots. Their offensive line is a big question mark. With cornerback, it's a depth issue right now. Obviously, the top 2 guys are pretty good, but at the same time, with his top 2 guys, Morris Claiborne has big injury questions. With their starting, linebackers, both from outside linebacker and one of their starting inside linebackers, there's big questions. So when you have problems with the offensive line and you can't really rush the passer, no matter how good your coverage is. Those are 2 major issues that's going to be hard to get over on unless you have an elite, skill group or an elite quarterback. And unfortunately, at this point, the Jets don't have it. Not saying that Darnold can't be that, but he still has to prove a lot to be that. So I don't think they have the talent on the roster to overcome those holes. They do have talent, but just not enough to make the playoffs at this point.
See, I think that right now I think the quarterbacks are going to play average this year. I think we're going to get a similar year to what McCown produced last year, and I think it will be from a couple guys because I do think Darnold will play at some point this season. I think we'll finish at like 7-9, 8-8, and that's not counting injuries that are going to happen on both sides, of the ball with the other teams coming into town, and maybe a quarterback goes down and we get a better player for Bridgewater or whatever may happen throughout the season. I think right now on paper, I think the Jets are good enough for 8-8. And that's not accounting for any miracles that may happen. So I actually think the Jets are going to be in the playoff race until late into the year. And I think they'll be
week 6?
Well, as Jets fans...
No, I'm kidding.
Yeah. I think as Jets fans, we all know, like, we hit that point in the season where there are games that we should win, that we shouldn't win, that we end up winning, and that games we just give away. I think a great example would be the Jaguars game from last year. We had no business winning that game. The Jaguars were a great team last year who happened to have a down week, and I think that happens a lot in the NFL. And I think the Jets are talented enough as a roster. I think they could capitalize on that a bunch of times. Maybe call me optimistic. Maybe it's because, and I'm usually not optimistic. No, and so this is rare for me.
But that is an optimistic view. But at the same time, the way that you're looking at the Jaguars having a down game, what says the Jets can't have a down game?
Because we always have down games. We're the Jets.
Yeah, exactly.
We always have down games.
Exactly. The Browns game last year, the Buccaneers. I think the Browns and the Buccaneers games last year were the ugliest games to watch on film.
That pissed me off so much. Oh, I hate Ryan Fitzpatrick.
The problem, like I said, is they have two big holes, and those are two holes that come up a lot at the end of games. Is your line able to hold, to give Sam Darnold enough time to make a 5 to 7 step drop to hit a guy on 3rd and 10? And just like Von Miller, you see it all the time when he was in the playoffs. How many big times or during big game situations did he make a sack or something like that, or pressure Tom Brady or Cam Newton or whoever it was? So having huge holes like that with not necessarily, listen, the Jets have the best quarterback situation they've had since probably Chad Pennington at this point, or definitely since Chad Pennington at this point, and hopefully a lot better than that. But at the same time, it's still a question mark at this point necessarily what they're all going to be as a collective group. And they have good wide receiver core. I think the fact that the Jets are like ranked bottom 5 by ESPN is a bunch of garbage. Whoever, and listen, I am not like the most optimistic Jets fan. I try to give a really real view, and film helps with that. I can't really lie when I break down film consistently. I just look stupid. If you watch any film and you're saying the Jets have a bottom 5, even bottom 10 wide receiver core in the NFL, you don't know what you're talking about. 2, you're stupid and you're trying to get clicks because you're crapping on a big market media team, or 3, I guess I really don't know. So it's just but it's not Julio Jones at the same time. But the Jets do have a really good receiving core, really like it. But like I said, I just don't think it's enough to overcome some of the deficiencies they have on their roster at this point.
All right, Joe, last question for you. Thank you again for being with us for quite a while. Last question, and I want hopefully this will hype up some Jets fans about Sam Darnold. He is the current glimmering light for a lot of fans right now. When evaluating him, and this was a question that I was going to ask earlier, but I think it could be a nice place to leave it. Was there a particular trait or multiple traits that you think set him apart from other rookies that you've watched, maybe in this year's class or in past year's class? Basically, is there something you can identify that, in your opinion, makes Sam Darnold special, and through that the Jets actually have a very bright future through these traits that Sam Darnold already possesses as a 21-year-old rookie?
Yeah, well, there's a couple of things. One, like you said, the 21-year-old rookie, the anticipation throws he made at USC were special. And listen, you can pull up a GIF of Baker Mayfield or Lamar Jackson making these throws, and I watched their film too. But Sam Darnold did that consistently every single game. Almost every other throw is an impressive throw. So the anticipation throws, there was no other quarterbacks who made it like he did in the draft. His ability to go through full field reads and not panic, and when he does see a wide receiver open, quickly hitch towards that receiver and throw a rocket. Now, listen, it's not a Josh Allen arm, but he does have a pretty damn strong arm, so that was a nice trait that he had. Keeping his eyes downfield, there was not a quarterback in this class who could do it like he could, at least in my opinion, and you can go and look at the film review for yourself. If you disagree, then we can have an interesting conversation. But, yeah, so his ability to keep his eyes downfield and pressure, his ability to take a shot in the mouth. Baker Mayfield could do that too, but Darnold showed that a lot. So there's a couple different things, and that throwing on the run ability was ridiculously impressive. And it's not accuracy where it's general accuracy. It's pinpoint accuracy Where the other quarterbacks, yeah, they were accurate where they would get the ball to the receiver, but there was plays where Darnold would throw it where I'm telling you it could not be an inch to the left, an inch to the right, an inch down lower, an inch too much higher. He made those throws every single game, on the run or standing in the pocket with poor mechanics. So some of the plays he was able to make, like I said, with those full field read abilities, with being able to go through those reads quickly, throwing on the run, taking shots in the mouth, stepping up in the pocket, drifting in the pocket when he needs to, was really incredible for his age. And I don't think anybody else in that class had that. And that's why he was my number one quarterback. You look at the interceptions, and that's why a lot of people questioned him. But that was, like I said, that was being too aggressive. It wasn't misreading things. So the plays he made on a consistent basis with no talent around him, and a lot of people point to the Baker Mayfield versus Ohio State game, then point to Sam Darnold versus Ohio State. Look at Sam Darnold's supporting cast compared to Baker Mayfield. It wasn't even close. Darnold was under pressure almost every single snap, and he didn't have much talent on his team other than Ronald Jones, who was a talent, but it doesn't necessarily help Sam Darnold's passing statistics a lot. So he's a special quarterback. I really do have a lot of faith in him. I'm just hoping the Jets develop him correctly, and I do have some faith in Jeremy Bates that he's going to be able to do that. And another, positive sign with that is the fact that they do have a guy like McCown and Bridgewater. Say what you want about them. No, it's not Matt Ryan and Aaron Rodgers and all these guys, but in terms of the quarterback room, in terms of helping, with characteristics and trying to help Sam Darnold grow as a professional, they might have the best quarterback room for him to possibly go into. So he's in a great situation. They could play over him if they need to, and he has some traits that are just ridiculously impressive for his young age. And even, like I said, those throws that he makes, there's NFL quarterbacks who can't make those throws at this time. So for him to be able to do that at such a young age is just damn impressive.
All right. So even if Joe Blewett does not,
excited.
Yes, even if Joe Blewett does not think the Jets will make the playoffs, at least we can turn to this for some positivity. Joe, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. You were here for a while, so I guess we should give you an opportunity to plug where our viewers can follow you on Twitter and follow your upcoming show.
Yeah, really appreciate it. So, like I said, on the podcast app, just search the podcast app. It's TOJ Film Room, TOJ space film space room. And we also have a YouTube channel, which the YouTube channel is the podcast. So I do a 2-hour podcast every week, 2.5 hours. And listen, I'm going to talk about the games and all that stuff. I'm going to talk about some, roster battles and top 25 and things like that. But the conversation we've been having with players' strengths and weaknesses, I'm able to specifically show you those things on film. So I'm not blowing steam up my own ass saying, oh yeah, I know this stuff. I'm going to show you exactly what I'm talking about and exactly how to diagnose plays and see what they're trying to do, or showing you what a player did wrong. And I'm going to do that for 16 games the Jets play and the 4 preseason games. So for 20 games this season, I'll give you the players who played well, who played poorly, major plays in the game, and what went wrong or what went right. So it's going to be fun if you want to learn some film. Or even if you already know a lot of film and you just want to listen to somebody else talk about it like not many other Jets podcasts do, especially the video aspect, then, like I said, please go to Turn on the Jets on YouTube. So, like I said, just Turn on the Jets, subscribe. You'll get a notification every time I go live or post a show, and then TOJ Film Room on the podcast app. And release a show every Wednesday or Thursday, so I would appreciate any new listeners, and thank you guys for having me.
All right, Joe, what's going on, man?
Oh, hold on. Wait, am I still Buster Screen?
We can call you.
Rashard Robertson.
I'm trying to give you a. Yeah, well, I know I listened to you guys in the past, and for this interview, I guess you can call it an interview. You're actually pretty good, so we can take a step up. Let's call you like a Jermaine Kearse. Not too great,
I'll take
but
that.
pretty solid.
No, I'll take it.
And steady. All right.
I'll take it. The best player wears number 10 in soccer, so clearly I'm the best player.
Well, he wears number 1 right now, so.
Jermaine Kearse?
Yeah, Jermaine Kearse is wearing number 1. Oh, I thought you said Terrell Pryor. I'm sorry. My apologies.
No, hell yeah.
You're an idiot, man.
I just associate with you with Terrell Pryor, Kyle. I apologize.
Before I go too, and I'm not unless you want to get in the whole breakdown, Kyle, and this is why the Buster Stream reputation comes out sometimes, If you think Terrell Pryor is better than Anunwa or Anderson, you are out of your mind, friend. I could bring up plenty of examples. The only things that he is good at, unless you're going to try to go toe-to-toe on film, he has good height, weight, and he has some yak. But in terms of his route running, his release off the line, his drops, his awareness in route running, he's not that good of a player, dude. I'm sorry. It's just you're wrong on that one.
Oh, thank God. Thank God somebody put Kyle in his place with some facts. Joe, it was great to have you on, man.
Yeah, thanks. Hopefully I'll talk to you guys again soon.
Yeah, definitely.
Thanks for being on, Joe.
Oh, that was lovely. Oh, that made my week right there. Listen to the pod and just heard you call Terrell Pryor the 4th best player on the team.
Yeah.
Will you admit you're wrong now or no?
Not until he steps on the field, no.
Because I do realize that does imply that you take Terrell Pryor over Robbie Anderson.
Yeah, that was kind of the point.
So if you could choose, I mean, Kyle, honestly, if I was listening to the show, I'd click off after hearing that. If half the show...
I just need them to listen for 30 seconds.
Okay, it doesn't affect it. Okay. Honestly, so if you're telling me I'm starting an NFL team, scrap that. I need one wide receiver right now. Who are you taking? Terrell Pryor, Robbie Anderson, Jermaine Kearse, or Quincy Enunwa, or even Chad Hansen. You're taking Terrell Pryor. Robbie Anderson is by far I could even argue Enunwa probably. I would easily Enunwa. What am I saying? Enunwa and Anderson
Enunwa is over Anderson. That's not a question.
I don't know. As far as consistently getting touchdowns, Anderson is pretty lethal. Yeah,
I'm
even
sorry.
If he's
Quincy Enunwa had a broken neck. I don't think that was a fair competition.
No. That's not. I love Enunwa. Enunwa's probably my favorite player on the team. But I'm saying, I don't know. If you choose a guy, I mean, the point of the game is to get touchdowns, and Anderson's pretty damn good at getting touchdowns.
He's really good at getting
that doesn't sound like very sound analysis, but my point is even if he's a one-trick pony, if that one trick is going 60 yards and getting deep touchdowns, I mean, yeah, Enunwa is much more versatile, and I'd probably take him, but I think it's a debate, and I don't think you can just – and the fact that you take Terrell Pryor over both of them, or even Terrell Pryor over Jermaine Kearse, who's 10 times more productive, it just shows that you don't know what you're talking about when it comes to this. Kyle, I think you know what you're talking about when it comes to a lot of other things on this Jets team, but for some reason you're blinded with Terrell Pryor love for whatever reason. It's probably just because he's cool. I don't even know.
Is he cool?
Yeah, switched from quarterback to wide receiver. He's
Is that
tall,
cool?
lengthy.
Sounds like a failure.
I mean, athletic. He catches, balls with one hand on the jug machine. You see that Instagram post?
I did not.
Okay, well, never mind. All right. Well, we've had that debate too many times. I'm not hopping into it. We're gonna bring in Scott Mason.
To hop off mine.
All right, that was just totally ruined any sort of momentum we just had there. We're going to go ahead and bring on the honorary third host of the Jet Take podcast, Scott Mason, of the official host of the Play Like a Jet podcast, excuse me.
Yeah.
So, Scott Mason, welcome to the show.
Hey, boys. By the way, I hate to pile on here, Kyle, but Joe is obviously right about Terrell Pryor. In fact, we talked about this on the Film Room show that you can download on YouTube right now and on iTunes. Say that again?
That started as an argument and ended with a plug.
Well, that's how I do it, boys. I'm trying to teach you the ways. You got to figure out ways to weave in and out. But no, in reality, seriously, I didn't even put. If you go ahead and check out the show, I didn't even put Terrell Pryor on my top 25 list. We did the top 25 players on the Jets heading into training camp. He's not even on my list. So I obviously agree with Joe. I think Joe had him low. He had him like 22nd, but I didn't even put him on the list.
I think he probably would have made my list. Probably low though, because you think about it, there's 25 starters really, kicker, punter, long snapper, and then 11 on each side. Then I'm thinking, I mean, there are some weak starters there, and even if you dive into the backup, I don't know. Top 25, I think he'd make it, but he'd be right around 24, 23.
I think it's fair. I considered putting him at the end of the list, but at the end of the day, there's just too many things working against him, including the injuries. So I don't know. We'll see. I thought it was an interesting show, though, because you know how it is with Joe, and I'm glad you guys had him on. When he breaks down film, even if it's just a couple of plays here and there of a player, he really dives in and shows you why he thinks what he thinks. And so nobody could ever say about Joe Blewett that he doesn't back his opinions up, because he sure as hell does.
Yeah, and I will say this, Kyle. I hope, for the sake of being a Jets fan, that Terrell Pryor just lights it up this year and puts up like 15 touchdowns.
Yeah, we all hope that.
Yeah,
I think he'll get like 5 or 6.
I think he'll get a few. I think he'll probably get 4. That's what I'd say. I think he'll get a few in the red zone. I mean, he's not that fluid of a route runner and stuff, and I don't know how physical he is, but he does have the size. And anytime you have a guy that's that big and that athletic and has those type of hops, I think
it's almost like he's an ideal number 1 receiver who hasn't been playing the position for a long time and should really be given a chance.
He's almost 30 years old, dude. I mean, what do you?
Yeah, but
when
like
do you want him to
body,
learn how to play receiver? What do you expect?
He's only been playing it
for
for 3 years, Scott. I mean,
yeah, I get that, but he's almost 30 years old. I mean, how much you want him to learn now?
Quincy Newell's been doing this for what, 10 years? Counting high school and college.
My point is, how much do you expect him to learn at almost 30 years old? Look, he's a height, weight, speed guy. That's what he is. I don't expect him to really become a crisp route runner or develop really good hands or being able to get off the line or any of that stuff. I don't expect that stuff to happen for him this late in the game, but he's 6'5", 220, and he's got great speed, so those are his attributes.
I won't say he's a great route runner because he's obviously not, but he is definitely a reliable pass catcher and a guy who's put up numbers in Cleveland.
His hands are shaky, man. Go back and watch that tape. He's got shaky hands. I'm telling you right now, you go back and watch the tape, you'll see it. Yeah, he put up numbers because listen, the one we all remember obviously is Darrelle Revis. I mean, he toasted Darrelle Revis, but
actually,
essentially, he blocked it out of his memory. No, but in all seriousness, he's a height, weight, speed guy. We'll see what he brings. I don't expect a lot. I know you do. Hopefully you're right because, like Ben said, I think we'd all love to see him catch 15 touchdowns. I just don't expect that much. That's all.
All right, Scott. Well, welcome to the show. I guess we'll hop into it. We have 2 more days until training camp officially gets underway, and we've already kind of talked about the Sam Darnold contract situation. But I guess I'll give the mic to you if you have anything you'd like to add about it. Are you worried about the situation, or do you think it's one of those things that's going to be resolved in the next 48 hours or so?
Yeah, it's going to get resolved soon for a couple of reasons. The first one is that it's not like the old days where there was some sort of mystery. You kind of have the draft slots set up, so there's only so much wiggle room that you're going to have in terms of negotiation on either side. I expect this thing to get done in the next couple of days. I wouldn't be shocked if it gets done maybe even as late as Friday morning, but it really doesn't matter that much to me. I expect him to be in tow very quickly, so I know that it's one of those things where it's the Jets, so people always have to freak out about everything, but you know what? If this goes into camp and he doesn't sign, then I'll start to get a little bit worried. But for right now, I think it'll get done in the next couple days.
All right, I agree with that as well. Hopping into a little more fun topics, I know that I don't want to mess up. I think it was Kyle. Help me out here. Which beat writer was it that started the whole breakout guy? Dennis Wazak.
Dennis Wazak. Yeah.
That's what it was.
One of my favorites, by the way, because he's a huge heavy metal fan like me. So.
Well, that wouldn't be why he's one of my favorites. I actually do think he's just one of the better guys. He's one of the better guys in the beats.
Absolutely.
I didn't want to mess up his.
Tremendous.
Yeah, I don't want to blow his last name there. Yeah, slightly concerning that you're a big heavy metal guy, Scott. I don't mean to say anything, but seek help.
Okay. Hey, listen, it's fine. But Dennis is a great writer, and I agree with you. I think he's one of the best on the beat, and I thought that was an interesting thing that he did. And it caught fire. I saw everybody all over Twitter was responding.
Yeah, so everybody was doing it, and we figured we might as well do it in our show. I know Kyle's done it. Scott, I'm not sure if you did it. But I guess we'll do it on the show. Just give our answers for this, and the listeners at home can think about who they'd have in these specific spots. So basically the way he structured it was he put labels, and I guess he assigned it to a player this season. So breakout guy, comeback kid, rising star, don't forget about, needs a rebound, dark horse number 1, dark horse number 2, and under the radar. So we'll start it. A breakout guy on this team, and so all credit goes to Dennis Wazak for coming up with this list of questioning here that'll take care of the next 10 minutes of this podcast. But a breakout guy, Scott, I guess I'll start with you. For this team, who do you see breaking out, coming out of his shell in 2018?
Sure. By the way, real quick, since he is the one that inspired this, I think it's only fair. If you want to follow Dennis and respond yourself, you can at DWaz73 on Twitter, and you can check out his work at the Associated Press. But my breakout guy is Chad Hansen. From everything that I've heard about what's going on at camp, and also from what I saw of him, not only in little bits and pieces last year, but obviously when he was playing at Cal, I think he has the opportunity to really make a dent in this offense. I'm not sure that he's going to get a ton of targets, but I could see him being a guy that could get 30, 40 catches and a couple of touchdowns, which, again, is a second-year guy in a receiving corps that's pretty good, despite what some of the national media likes to say. It's a pretty good receiving corps. So if he can get a decent amount of targets, I think he can make it happen. He's got really great, man, you watch his the way that he's aware of where he always is on the field, the way that he, not only with locating the ball, but also just knowing where he is so that if he's by the sideline, he finds a way to stay in bounds. You'll see it all the time if you watch his tape. He's able to kind of, toe the line and make the catches that don't look like they should be able to be made. He's not a super fast guy, but he's fast enough. He's not huge, but he's pretty big. And so I think that he's a – what? Oh, I should have known that was coming from Kyle. But, yeah, no, I think with Hansen, he's a guy that will have a breakout season. Not that I think he's going to the Pro Bowl or anything, but that he'll become a real solid contributor this year to the team.
All right, Kyle, your thought on a breakout guy?
This one, Ben, you guys have both probably seen my list. It was on Twitter. Probably a lot of listeners have too. But this one, I feel like a lot of people were surprised by it. I'm going to go breakout guy Leonard Williams, and it's as surprised this may be, Leonard Williams has not gotten into his best form yet, and he's a very good player, Pro Bowler. Obviously had a little bit of a down year last year, but I think the whole Muhammad Wilkerson, Sheldon Richardson, toxic locker room, toxic on the field production specifically. Wow, I spit all in my mic. That was embarrassing. Specifically from Muhammad Wilkerson, just basically loafing around on the field out there was a detriment not only to the team, but specifically Leonard Williams' success on the inside. I think guys like Nathan Shepard, who I don't think are immediately going to come in and be starters or be a starter and get like 8 sacks immediately for the Jets, because I don't think that's the role he's going to be playing, and I don't think as a rookie he's going to be talented enough or at least productive enough to do it. But I do know a body like Henry Anderson who can come in and start and be productive and at least be somebody that teams have to respect, opens up the door for Leonard Williams, and I think we're going to see more and more of that, because regardless of what the sacks say, regardless of what the stats say about Leonard Williams, he's a productive run stopper. Every year of his career, he's getting better and better. I think that's going to consistently go up for him until we reach the point where, you can't go up anymore. I think pass rushing, which is always what fans look at when it comes to defensive linemen and anybody in the top 7, basically, that is going to be a big thing for him this year. I think we're going to see him get, he's probably been working on, well, we've seen him been working on behind the scenes on One Jets Drive and a lot of stuff he's been posting on Insta and Twitter, working on, the quickness, wrapping up guys, identifying cuts before it's made, a lot of tackles for losses in the backfield, a lot of getting to the quarterbacks, because we've seen it. I saw in his rookie year of Andy Dalton, I think that was his rookie year, the game that we had like 9 sacks in or something to open the year on 9/11 that we ended up losing. Very embarrassing. But we saw it a couple times where, quarterbacks have been able to evade him. I think that he's going to take that next step this year, or at least I'm hopeful that he will, and he's going to be a lot more productive on the stat sheet. I'm going to guess like 8 sacks for him this year, because I think he's just going to be more dominant. This is his going into his 3rd year in an NFL locker room. I think his strength, in his youth is at an all-time high, and the talent around him is probably the best it's been, at least in terms of guys who you can depend on to be there, not be suspended, not be toxic, and not loaf around. So I don't think it's going to benefit Leonard Williams.
Yeah, I definitely, on this question, I think I agree with Scott on this. I think Chad Hansen is a guy that you're going to see make a dent on this offense, as you put it. And he's also developed a friendship with Sam Darnold, which I think will definitely help when Darnold becomes a starter, if he is the starter this year. For sake of, and I'll probably do this throughout since I'm going 3rd, I'll change my answer, though. I'll go with a guy like Elijah McGuire. I think he's a guy that I was impressed with when he got on the field for the Jets. I mean, I think definitely receiving, he proved that he can be a consistent pass-catching running back at the very least. So at the very least, you have a guy who can be a starting 3rd down running back. But I also really liked when he got the ball, he showed some burst. He reminds me of Bilal in some of the things that they do. But no, I'm excited for him in this offense. I think you're going to just see him take the next step, and he's going to have a lot more opportunities, in my opinion. I think that Jeremy Bates is going to try to utilize him more as a pass catcher in ways that he wasn't really used last year with John Morton. I think you saw it, that catch down the sidelines against New Orleans. It comes to mind as, when was the last time we saw a Jets running back run a wheel route like that? I can recall it being run against us, but there aren't many times that we've had a deep pass to a running back. And Elijah McGuire ran a great route, caught the ball, came down with it with the lights in his eyes. So I'm excited for Elijah McGuire. I think at the very least he's going to be your starting third down running back. I think this is probably Powell's last year with us, and I think you'll start to see him transition as a guy who can actually get the ball as well. He's displayed some great speed. I think the one thing I'm kind of worried about him is he runs high, which, for a running back can be kind of problematic and lead to just easily getting that. Not a drug reference, Kyle, obviously, meaning he doesn't really dig his shoulder pads down, meaning that could lead to him getting tackled easier or potentially fumbles. He almost seems unbalanced at times, but he definitely displays his burst. He definitely displays a bit of elusiveness, and even though he runs high, he is hard to tackle at times, and not to mention all of that in addition to pass catching ability. The Jets coaching staff has raved about him this offseason, so I'm a big believer in Elijah McGuire. I think he'll make an impact on this offseason. Scott, comeback kid, the pretty obvious answer with this one, but I'll give it to you.
Yeah, for sure. I got to be Quincy Enunwa. I don't really see how it could be anybody else. And Quincy, you guys are talking about Quincy and Robbie Anderson. Ben, I kind of agree with you. I think Quincy is a better all-around receiver. Robbie Anderson, like you said, one-trick pony, but damn, that one trick is one hell of a trick. So you could make a case for Robbie if you wanted, but I think Quincy is the best receiver on this team, and unless that neck injury somehow continues to nag him and something happens, if he stays healthy, especially if Darnold is in the lineup, I could see some really nice things for him, and I think that he'll bounce back really nicely from that injury last year.
Yeah, Kyle?
I think, like Scott said, the easy answer here is Quincy Enunwa. Not going to waste your guys' time.
Yeah, I will waste your time and give another answer, even though, again, I'll go Quincy Enunwa. But if I had to go with a different answer, I'd probably go with both the guards in this case. I think both Carpenter and both Winters struggled a lot with injuries last year, even though they managed to play through a lot of it. I think you just saw the production dip quite a bit. They were pretty terrible last year. And Carpenter and Winters were two things that I felt as Jets fans you could hang your hat on the offensive line and say, hey, we have very strong guard play. Carpenter and Winters are very decent to very good offensive linemen. But last year they were pretty terrible. And a lot of that was due to the injuries. Brian Winters has struggled a lot with injuries. Now, his toughness has never wavered as he's played through most of them. But this guy was paying, a torn pectoral muscle, so something like that. And then Carpenter also had issues. So I think, they're both healthy now. I'm looking forward to them. If they can stay healthy, I think, obviously I think Quincy Enunwa is the answer here, but if they can stay healthy, I think you might see that could be arguably the biggest difference in this team from last year's to this year's. If both those guys are healthy, you could make at least the case for it because the offensive line, and specifically the guard play, was just so bad last year. If those guys go back to the form they were at, in 2015, 2016, which was just pretty average, pretty okay, pretty good, then I think I would label them comeback kids. Scott, rising star. Who are you going to go with?
The obvious answer is the one I'm going to go with here, Adams. I think without a doubt, and I said this on the Film Room show with Joe, I rank Jamal Adams as my number one player on the team, and not because I think he's necessarily the best player on the team right now, but because I think that by the time 2018 is over, and again, you can't count Darnold because rookies kind of can't be in the discussion on this, but I think by the time the 2018 season is over, Jamal Adams is going to probably be head and shoulders the best player on the team. He is the only guy on this team, again, putting Darnold aside for now, that I look at and think could be truly a special talent, a guy that could be a possible perennial All-Pro. All due respect to Leonard Williams, who I think is very good, I just don't see that in him. I think he's going to be a very good defensive lineman for quite a while. He already has been pretty good, but I don't see special with him. I see it with Adams, just his instincts combined with his athletic ability, and now that he has Tremaine Johnson back there to help out, so he doesn't have to necessarily be so worried about guys getting burned and having to be back there deep or maybe taking chances that he shouldn't be taking. I think that he's going to really progress this year, and we're going to see a lot of what we expected when he was drafted out of LSU. I thought he had a good but not great rookie year, but I think he's going to take a real leap forward this year. I think he's the obvious answer, and to me, there's really no other choice for rising star that makes anywhere near as much sense as Jamal Adams.
Kyle?
Strongly disagree with you because I think Jamal Adams is already a star in the eyes of most people in the very large New York market and a lot of the media, which is primarily based in
I
New
meant
York.
in terms of play, Kyle, not in terms of whether or not he's going to get commercials or something like that.
Yeah, and
okay,
also, Kyle,
when you say
he made plenty of boneheaded decisions last season. I mean, like I think I agree with Scott 100% on what he said, which is I think I'll say we'll exclude Sam Darnold for now. I think he definitely has the potential to be a perennial All-Pro. I mean, you saw flashes of it. You saw flashes of Ed Reed and Troy Polamalu in there, and that's exciting to see. But it doesn't mean it's fully materialized. There were plenty of times where he got burned or where he missed tackles.
See, I think the term star, though, is like a lot of the times materialized. I think Hall of Fame level players who are stars obviously back it up with their play, but I can tell you Juju Smith-Schuster is a star based off his social media and how much people talk about it. Now, is he a great player? No, but he's definitely a star in the NFL media.
I think, to be fair, Kyle, and maybe this is the fact that I know Dennis personally, I'm pretty sure he meant rising star as a player, not rising star as a social media personality, but that's just a guess.
Maybe. Well, that I interpret star a different way. Nonetheless, I have Elijah McGuire as the rising star because I think he's one of the most talented young guys on the team, and a lot of people have him not making it out of training camp. I don't really understand that.
Kyle, nobody. You just said three. Okay, in the past 30 minutes, you said three of the most asinine things I've ever heard in this podcast. One, your continued defense of Terrell Pryor being better than Robbie Anderson and Quincy Enunwa. But then two of the things you just said there, nobody who has any respectability is saying that Elijah McGuire is getting cut. What?
I saw a tweet that specifically said that Thomas Rawls. I don't know. I'm going to go search for it, man.
Thomas Rawls, Trenton Cannon. Really? No, Elijah McGuire is making this. The running backs coach compared him to LaDainian Tomlinson like 2 months ago. You think he's just getting cut now? He'll make the roster. Whether or not he has a huge impact is another question, but he'll make the roster. Jeez.
I agree.
Also, and then your interpretation of star, your interpretation of star as, we're talking about media person. No, we're talking about on the field. Kyle, come on.
I don't think of that as a star, though.
You don't think of Tom Brady as a star?
He is a star, but he definitely backs it up with his play. And there are stars who are not
if Tom Brady didn't
players.
have Instagram as he didn't. Tom Brady didn't have an Instagram until a few years ago. So Tom Brady wasn't a star in 2008 because he didn't have a huge social media presence. I understand what you're saying.
He is constantly in the media for either good or bad things.
So,
a lot of them bad.
So you know what this reminds me of?
Tim Tebow is in the media.
Is a star, and he does not back it up with his play.
So so you're saying a star. So what you think Dennis Wesnick is referring to here is a star transcends football. You're talking about notoriety, people knowing.
There's no way that's what Dennis had in mind. By the way,
that's how I.
and then Kyle, what makes it so funny is then you use Elijah McGuire. So your definition of a star.
He's a running back in a large market with two guys ahead of him who are fairly old. Well, old for running backs. Bilal Powell, who has never been utilized in his career, who will be gone by next year, Ben.
You're running in circles. Kyle, okay, I could respect that answer. If you acknowledge that we're obviously talking about football. An up-and-coming guy who's – if you're going to say Elijah McGuire by the end of the year, this is a guy that he's going to be our starting running back in 2019. He's a star.
Which I have said if you read my article, Ben.
Okay, I didn't, but okay. But then you said that being a star is not about football. It's about their notoriety in the public. And so then you used the Jets' third-string running back. And that was the only disconnect there, Kyle. I don't.
Well, it wasn't the only disconnect. There were several disconnects.
There were several disconnects. That's the main one. Is your definition was asinine, but then your pick would have been a little crazy for the question itself. But then your pick for what your definition of the question was made no sense whatsoever.
I strongly disagree. He's a running back,
answer.
Which is one of the more popular positions in the
Honestly, the only way this answer could have been anywhere
is stepping into a starting role.
The only way that answer could have been any worse is if you said Terrell Pryor. Like
I don't think I have Terrell Pryor on my list.
Yeah, oh my God, that was okay. Rising star Elijah McGuire.
Okay, Johnny Manziel is a star.
I'm going to send a text to Dennis after this, and he's going to get a kick out of this conversation, I'm sure. But
I'll try to get him on the show soon. We'll try to get him on the show in the next few weeks to do a breakdown, and we'll ask him about that, Kyle. Okay? Jeez Louise.
But Ben, you can't tell me a running back in the New York market who will step into a starting role, which is my prediction by the end of the year.
Running back around like it's a.
It's a huge position, Ben. Le'Veon Bell, David Johnson, some of the biggest names in football.
With Chris Ivory a star? I don't know.
Yeah,
I mean, this is kind of funny.
For a year? Yeah.
No, he wasn't. Did you
say
get
Chris
any
Ivory was a
endorsement?
star? Did you just say
Did
Chris
I see
Ivory
Chris Ivory on billboards or something? Come on, man.
Oh my God! Did you just say Chris Ivory was a star?
For a year, yeah. People.
What year was Chris Ivory a star?
2015, when he led the team in rushing and was like a Pro
He
Bowl.
wasn't a star though. He might have led the team in rushing, but Matt Forte led the team in rushing 2 years ago. Oh my.
You know what this is, Ben? Honestly, and this is the same thing with the Terrell Pryor thing. Kyle, and I respect this to a degree. He'll dig himself into these positions, and then no matter how absurd they become, he just won't let it go and has to defend it. No matter what.
I can understand how you guys agree with the Terrell Pryor thing. I think this is 100% feasible. If you guys don't understand how much media plays in today's NFL jersey sales and stuff, and guys who do end up on billboards and stuff.
The question was very simple. We're talking about training camp. Who's the guy who's going to break out? A guy who's going to be a comeback kid, rising star. And you're talking about media notoriety, which, okay, fair.
Okay, here's the difference between rising star and breakout kid. They both have to do with football. The term star has to do with notoriety, Ben. If he was talking purely about football, he would have said breakout guy, like we did with the first one. Now, doesn't that make sense?
No, Kyle, you're interpreting it wrong. Breakout guy is a guy like Chad Hansen, who only had, what did he have? Probably like 10, 12 catches last year. He's a guy who's really going to come out of his shell, kind of like Anunwa from 2014 to 2015 or even 2015 to 2016. A rising star is if you take a guy who's already so your Leonard Williams answer could have been there. He's a guy that's established himself as a good player, but now he's going to become like a star. I agree. He's going to become a top player on this team, a franchise player, a guy that people around the league are going to take note of. And I can respect if you're going to say Elijah McGuire. That's your opinion. I like Elijah McGuire. But it was the fact that you changed the question to talk about media notoriety. Okay.
That's how I interpret the word star. Like Hollywood Walk of Fame, you have a star.
This reminds me of Colin Cowherd a bunch of years ago saying that the Hall of Fame is supposed to be for famous people, so Jose Canseco should be in the Hall of Fame.
That's basically what
Kyle's he was arguing. A cheater. He was a cheater. He doesn't deserve to be in the Hall of Fame.
Tim Tebow should be in the Hall of Fame because
Tim
he's
Tebow
famous.
should be in the. Tim Tebow's a rising star for the Jets.
Tim
should be in
Tebow
the Jets
is
Ring of
still
Honor.
A star. Tim Tebow can sign right now for an NFL team and be the top-selling jersey.
Okay, wait. So if the Jets, I have to think, if the Jets were to sign Tebow, you're saying you'd put him as a rising star.
His play would not back it up. No.
I don't understand this whole thing. This makes no sense to me. I'm lost.
I'll give you. Okay, we're gonna move.
Ben,
on.
let's just move on because I think
Scott,
we're talking in circles.
He dug himself into the hole, and now he's not going to admit he's wrong. He could have said, "You know what? You're right. I take it back." If that's how we're interpreting the question, then I'll change my answer. Or, sorry, I interpreted it this way. All right, whatever. I can respect an Elijah McGuire as a guy who's going to be. I don't necessarily agree with it. I see him more as a breakout guy. For rising star, you said Jamal Adams. I would agree with that, but I know Scott and I are really in sync. I'll go Robbie Anderson, though. I definitely think he's a guy who's going to just keep building on what he had last year. I think that, you look at his jump that he made from 2016 to 2017. Because 2016, people were very happy with Robbie Anderson. Like, hey, we got this.
Sure.
Especially after the preseason, they were, people were really hyped about this young kid that we have. 2017, he took a jump bigger than a lot of people expected. I mean, that was probably the best case scenario. This guy turned into a guy that people could view as a number one wide receiver. I remember last year around this time, Kyle and I were having the same silly old debates. We were talking about, well, hey, if Nunwa gets injured, do we trust Robbie Anderson as a number one wide receiver? And I was like, I don't know if this guy can run the routes of a number one wide receiver. I think he might be a one-trick pony. And at that time, he was coming off a season with Ryan Fitzpatrick, so he didn't have really the touchdowns that he did last year. So, I think you look at that jump, I think he's going to make it's going to be hard to make a similar type of jump, but I think he's going to make another jump in a positive direction, and I think you're just going to see him become more versatile. I think that's going to be the biggest thing. I think he's going to maintain his ability on the deep ball. I think he's going to maintain his ability to get off the press, but I think you're going to see him add some more stuff, add some stuff. You saw it a little bit in the game against the Chiefs when he wasn't really getting open deep, and so what they did is they had him go over the middle on drags and on slants and stuff. I think you'll see a lot of that, and he'll be able to use his space in open field. In essence, what I'm saying is a lot of Robbie Anderson's stats you look at, he has a lot of yards per catch. Because a lot of it is he's getting 50-yard touchdown bombs, and he catches at the end zone, and that's the end of the play. But I think in 2018, you're going to see a lot of yards after the catch. So it'll still count. It'll still have a lot of yards per catch, but I think you're going to see a lot in specific plays where he's going to catch it on a short pass and be able to turn it upfield and use his speed in a different way that he hasn't used before. So I'm going to say he's a rising star because he's going to bolster his repertoire and become an even more complete receiver for the Jets.
Ben, one thing I'll add to that is that one area where Anderson really improved last year was in being able to catch passes over his shoulder. So if you have Darnold who can hit him in stride, and even if it's not a short pass, even if it's a 15, 20-yard pass or 25-yard pass where he blows past somebody, if Darnold's hitting him over the shoulder, that's one of those things where, look, let's just be honest about it. If Robbie Anderson catches a ball and there's daylight ahead of him, it's over. No one's catching him. That's just the way it is. So I agree with you. I think that's a very respectable choice for breakout star. No question about it.
All right. Next one is Don't Forget About. Scott, your pick for this.
I got to go with Steve McClendon. I think McClendon's a guy that doesn't get talked about much, but he's such a good glue guy, I guess is the best way I would put it. Like, he does so many of the fundamental things well. He does the dirty work down there on the defensive line. He's not going to get you 10 sacks. He's not going to have 150 tackles, but he's always going to be doing things to help the defense make plays. And he doesn't get a lot of credit. People don't really talk about him much because, like I said, he's not flashy. And here's the other thing, to Kyle's point about being a quote-unquote star, he's not a talker either. So it's not like he's in the media with all these, like, outrageous quotes or anything like that. So I think he's an easy guy to kind of not think about because you got Leonard Williams and Jamal Adams and Tremaine Johnson's making all that money back there, and Darren Lee, your old buddy, he likes to talk a bit. So people forget a little bit about McClendon, but they shouldn't. He's one of the best players on this defense, and I think that he's going to have another really nice year, and I think he'll help some of the younger guys too, whether it's Foley, Fadakasi, or Nathan Shepard. He'll help their development on the defensive line. So he's a guy I definitely wouldn't be forgetting about.
Yeah, and Kyle, don't forget about?
I'm going to go with Jordan Leggett.
Jordan Leggett, all right.
Yeah, this is a guy who I think we were all fairly hyped for. Before the season, obviously things got in the way of him not getting, an opportunity, I guess to say. Obviously never saw the field for the most part, to step into the light. And I think this is a guy we invested a high amount in. What we took him 4th round, right? Jordan Leggett?
5th round.
5th round? Okay. So invested into the tight end position. And there are guys around him now where I think he has a really good opportunity to step into this. Number 1 tight end right now for us is Eric Tomlinson, because I think right now he's just the guy that the coaches absolutely know what they have in. We don't know what's going to happen with Herndon in the DUI. And then Bucky Hodges, is a guy who's going to be pushing Leggett, but Leggett is a guy who I think was uber talented coming out of college, obviously has some flaws that he has to work through, but I feel like that's just a name that a lot of people forgot about, who we were hyped about last offseason. Obviously, injuries got in the way of it, so don't forget about Jordan Leggett, because he has talent, and the Jets have a huge hole at tight end that needs to be filled by someone. I ultimately think it will be ended up as a committee type of thing, but Leggett has an opportunity if he wants it, so don't forget about him.
Yeah, there's quite a few guys I could go with the don't forget about, because I think this is, as I guess we've had some confusion earlier on in this, but I think this one you could be open to some interpretation. But I'll go with Jermaine Kearse, and I almost went with Jordan Jenkins because I think he's a guy that is a little, he's either underrated. I think he's underrated by the league, but a little overrated by some Jets fans at times. But I think he's a guy that's going to continue to grow, and I almost chose him as a breakout guy. I don't think he's ever going to be a a guy who has 15 sacks. He might have an occasional Calvin Pace year where he gets 10 sacks or whatever, just kind of randomly. But he's more of a, do the dirty work, kind of, great against the run, can get after the quarterback a little bit, but he's never going to be a star or stud outside linebacker. But Jermaine Kearse is a guy I'm going with don't forget about. And I guess my third receiver on this list. And the main reason it goes to is if/when Sam Darnold plays, I think you look around the wide receiver core, and I love what you see. I think you have the explosiveness of Robbie Anderson, the versatility of Quincy Enunwa, and the tight end position is a bit of a question mark. But what Jermaine Kearse brings to this offense is a safe pair of hands. And I think every time you see a rookie quarterback come into the league, and if they have success, they have one guy that they just always go, their safety valve. Just the guy, for Mark Sanchez, at times a lot of times it'll be a tight end. So for him, it turned out to be Dustin Keller. But when it came to a veteran presence that he was always looking to, it was Jericho Cotchery. And I think Jermaine Kearse could be the same thing for Sam Darnold. I think he's a safe pair of hands, a veteran he can turn to in the locker room, a guy who finds a way to be open, who can dominate over the slot, who had a very good year last year that doesn't get talked about that much. So Jermaine Kearse is a guy that's not really talked about at all because everybody's excited about Enunwa returning and Anderson keep growing. But Jermaine Kearse is not that old yet. I mean, what is he, 28, 27? Veteran, safe pair of hands, has been to the mountaintop before. I think he's going to be integral to Sam Darnold's development, and I'm excited to watch him play with Darnold in 2018. Kyle, quick question, though, going back to the star thing. I don't want to keep hashing on beating a dead horse. But, is Tim Duncan not a star because he's not an outlandish I'm being honest question. I'm not trying to make fun of him. I'm saying, if he's not a transcendent media superstar who's on the cover of People magazine, does that not make him a star? So is Tim Duncan not a star in the game of basketball?
He ended up being more – I just kind of swallowed my mic. Sorry about that. He ended up being more of a star towards the end of his career. When he was young and he was kind of just the big fundamental, no, I don't think he was a star. He was an absolutely great player, all-time great player. But as you saw later in his career, he started doing, commercials. He did the thing with Marvel and Spider-Man and all that. I think that's probably the most notable one. But he did, the Tommy Bahama thing with the shirts and stuff. But he started becoming more relevant in media and becoming that, big-time star that his talent and his production always, was there for. It's just a matter of how you market yourself, which is a big part of today's game.
But if he hadn't, so on the court he would have been one of the best defensive centers of all time. But if he hadn't done a Marvel commercial, he wouldn't be looked at as a star.
There are numerous things that he has done in his career. I'm sure we can
I'm
Wikipedia
saying ignore the you said late in his career he did some commercials and stuff. Yeah. You're saying without these integral commercials, he would not have been a star in the NBA.
I don't think he would be as big as he is. I think a good way of looking at this is look at Shaquille O'Neal, a guy who, whatever you want to say about him compared to Tim Duncan, obviously they played different positions through the majority of their careers. Duncan, power forward, who played center from time to time, just depending on the defense, but Shaq primarily a center. Shaq has always been in the media, always been on magazine covers, and say what you want about their respective careers because they're both great. Tim Duncan was probably a better player most of his career. I think we can agree on that. Tim Duncan, all-time player. Shaq, also an all-time player, but Shaq always on magazine covers, always into something. He's DJing now. He's doing whatever. He's staying relevant. He's on TNT. Shaquille O'Neal is a much bigger star than Tim Duncan is, and Tim Duncan can probably beat him any day of the week if he wanted to. So I think that's a good way of looking at this. If we're talking about stars in the NBA, just the NBA here, Shaquille O'Neal, much bigger, as a personality outside of basketball. Tim Duncan, I think, is the better basketball player, the more successful basketball player. Yeah, more successful.
Debatable.
Shaquille.
I think
how many rings did Shaq get?
Shaq has more rings.
Shaq got one with the Heat, and he got
Shaq 4.
Shaq's got 3 Finals MVPs.
I think he has 4 total rings, though.
How many rings does Tim Duncan have? 5?
Hold on. Tim Duncan. Look at this.
Google him, Ben. You remember that on TNT? Google me, Chuck.
I do. I got to say, quick side note, they have to find something comparable to that for football because that TNT halftime show with Shaq and Charles Barkley
phenomenal
is probably the best sports show. I mean, I will watch.
Such a train wreck. I love
it. Sometimes I'll just watch. I love the show. All right, I'm going to give you this next one, and then I'll look this up. Needs a rebound.
Need to rebound. I'm going to go with James Carpenter on this one. The reason I'm picking him over Winters, I debated the two of them. Winters at least has a built-in excuse because he's playing with a torn pec, as you pointed out. Carpenter was just flat-out terrible last year. I mean, absolutely terrible. I know there are people out there that like to say, oh, Carpenter, he's really good, but it was Wesley Johnson's fault. If you go and you watch the film, yeah, there are some plays here and there that Wesley Johnson blew and whatever, but, man, Carpenter was just so bad. He's just getting blown by. Half the time he didn't even look like he was trying. He needs desperately, for the sake of his own career, to rebound this year. Whether or not he does it, look, I'm a little optimistic. I know that people say that Rick Dennison is kind of stubborn and uses what he likes. I'm hoping that between him and Bates, they figure out how to mix and match a little bit and play to Carpenter and Winter's strengths a little more than they did last year with John Morton. But he desperately needs it. I'm going to say that nobody on this team needs to rebound more than him, because if Carpenter plays as poorly as he did last year, not only is he out of here from the Jets, but I think his time as a starting guard in the league could be in major jeopardy if he doesn't step it up this year. Because, look, despite what the media and some of the people that don't really follow the team or watch the film that closely think, these guys in the league all watch the film, and they're going to watch it, and if they see what they saw last year again for the second year in a row, he's in big trouble. So I'm going to pick him as need to rebound.
All right, Kyle, and really quickly, Tim Duncan has 5, Shaq has 4, but in game, Shaq averaged 4 more points, Shaq averaged more blocks, the same amount of rebounds. But yeah, overall career statistic, it's 4 NBA Finals to 5 NBA Finals, 3 Finals MVPs to 3 Finals MVPs, 1 NBA MVP for Shaq to 2 MVPs for Tim Duncan. I mean,
look, they're both all-time great players.
We
can sit here debating it, but it's
we can debate this for hours, and I think it might end up being even on how people view it. And I think
I agree with you that star should include, if you're looking at I just don't think that's what Dennis is saying. I do agree, yes, star. You want the most notable guys in your sports. But we're talking about a star for the Jets does not mean a star for People magazine. That's not what we were really talking. We're talking about a rising star for the Jets, a guy that Jets fans are going to be excited about for the next few years. We're not talking about who's going to be on the cover of, Cosmopolitan. We're just talking about it. In terms of the discussion, it was just very clear what he meant. But anyways, Kyle needs to rebound.
I agree with Sky. It's James Carpenter. I think, like he said, he made a good point. Well, Winters at least had an excuse. Torn, what was it? Biceps? What was it?
It was torn pec, right? Yeah.
Torn pectoral, yeah. Not easy to guard 290-pound, 300-pound plus men, and within 2 feet of you when you have a torn pec. So, bit of an excuse there. James Carpenter, on the other hand, say what you want about Wesley Johnson, obviously horrible, obviously gone. Carpenter didn't perform a lot, and I love Carpenter, so this is hard for me to admit, but he played like crap a lot. So he needs to rebound quickly, and I think, Scott, you brought up Rick Dennison, who I'm not a big fan of, if I'm being honest. I think he was let go of Buffalo for a reason, and the kind of zone blocking scheme that he likes to run may not fit with the guys we have, but he is a qualified individual. So hopefully he can work with what we have, but Carpenter needs to rebound specifically.
I will say this about Dennison, and this isn't always true. I use it for players a lot of times. Like if a team trades a specific player or lets a player go or something, oftentimes I'll look to at their fans' blog pages or something, just see how the fans feel about it, because the media might say one thing, but we know that if the Jets let go of Wesley Johnson, that some NFL people will be like, oh, he started for the Jets last year, he was under Nick Mangold, he had some success, whatever. But as Jets fans, we'd be like, oh, thank God he's gone.
Right.
So you can kind of get a good gauge about how the fans feel about him, how does he perform, because these are the people that are watching every single game that he played in. With Dennison, now this is only one Bills fan that I was talking to, but he absolutely despises Dennison.
Sure.
Dennison was the offensive coordinator, but he just said their blocking, specifically their run blocking, was absolutely horrible with the zone blocking scheme.
Right.
And it wasn't until they fired him that the running got going. He was like, he's pretty terrible. But he was the offensive coordinator.
Let's just hope he learned his lesson. That's what I'm hanging my hat on.
Yes, and again, he has less responsibility. So let's just
True.
hope. As far as needs a rebound, there are two guys here, both linebackers. I'll go with Darren Lee and Lorenzo Malden. Darren Lee, I'll start with this, and the only reason I'm putting him here, friend of the show, guy that
can I make a quick point here?
Sure.
That's be quick.
Don't you have to have been good at some point to rebound?
Yeah, that's fair, Ben. That's fair.
Yes and no.
What does rebound mean? How are you interpreting rebound, Ben?
Well, see, Kyle, when you grab a basketball off the rim after a missed shot. No, the reason I put Darren, I can remove Darren Lee. I put Lorenzo Malden there, and I don't
also
admit
not good.
I would not make the argument he was good, but I would say at least in 2015 he could get a few sacks. My point is a guy that needs to come back after a poor last season was basically what I was saying. If you want to say he needed to be good, I was just saying last season these two players did not play great. They need to rebound in 2018. If I can change my answer if needed, and I'd probably also go with Winters or Carpenter or something because there aren't many guys who are still in the roster that were at one point good and are now bad and need to be good again. Because I'm trying to look at who you could go. Not many. So I'll look at these two linebackers and put them in here just as saying they need to, rebound off of to poor last season's trend. Lorenzo Malden play it last year, but I'm saying we'll use his 2016 season. We'll start with Malden, and we'll start with Malden because. Look, the Jets don't have a starting outside linebacker opposite Jordan Jenkins. They'll probably start Josh Martin. Lorenzo Malden was it at times in 2015 and in 2016. Look, I just think, he at least proved that he could occasionally get after the passer. That he had that game in Jacksonville where he had like 2.5 sacks, and I think he had three or 4 sacks his rookie year or whatnot. And then he gained some weight to try to be an every down linebacker. He lost a lot of his speed.
Todd Bowles diet.
Didn't have as much of an impact. And then he lost the weight, and then he got hurt. So we haven't really seen him back to his rookie weight. And I'm not going to hang my hat on that. I don't even know if he's going to make the roster. Hopefully, my point was hopefully he can, and hopefully he can rebound off of a pretty rough 2-year stretch here and just get back to it, the very least providing minimal pass rushing effort. The very least having a guy you can add into the rotation and can get a few sacks a year. Hopefully a guy that you could plug in and get maybe more than a sack or two. Maybe you could get 4 or 5 sacks. Who knows? Darren Lee needs to rebound off of last year. I think he flashed at times, but he also flashed pretty badly at times. He now has the defensive play calling responsibilities. The coaching staff clearly believes in him. He believes in himself. He has a lot of attributes that I like. He was the guy that I wanted the Jets to pick. If you listen to the show back then, my prediction for them and the guy I wanted was Darren Lee because I liked the versatility and the athleticism. He's the new age linebacker. He's the Deion Jones that the Jets needed. He hasn't exactly panned out like that so far, but I do like his traits. He's still very young. He's now in a role that I think, puts a lot of responsibility on him, and hopefully he's up to the task. So I'm hoping he can rebound after some of the poor points last year. I will say this, though. He did have and I said it a little earlier, but he did have some good moments last year. I think there were some moments where he flashed. He could be a consistent starter for the Jets. His closing speed, his pursuit is there. His speed and athleticism is there. Hopefully that could at one point transfer into zone coverage. I'm sorry if I bended the questions. If that makes me a hypocrite towards Kyle, I will.
No, listen, no, not at all. You at least give the qualifiers so we understand what you're saying. These questions mean something different to everybody, I suppose.
All right. Well, we're gonna. I agree with Scott. We're gonna do 2 of these at a time. Dark horse 1 and 2. I want your 2 dark horses heading into training camp.
All right, this is one where I had some fun, and I just thought I'd throw out some names of guys that are like kind of long shots to even make the roster. One of them was Brandon Bryant, the guy that they picked in the supplemental draft. All we really know about him is that he's big and he's quick, but Rontez Miles is out. I know J.J. Wilcox is here, and that's a good sign, but if he's a guy that maybe they get something out of him. He's got a lot on his shoulder, a big chip on his shoulder now, talking about how he's got a ton to prove, and maybe he does something. So there's my dark horse number 1. And dark horse number 2 is a guy that a lot of people picked in this category, Doug Middleton. He's a guy that, listen, there are sometimes these guys that kind of hang around a little bit and then eventually they turn into something. Maybe that's what we see with him. So those are the two guys I had as my dark horses.
Kyle?
My two dark horses, my first one, it's going to be Antonio Garcia.
Damn.
Who
that's a good one.
That was
I liked him at, oh, sorry, Ben, didn't mean to cuck you there. But I liked him coming.
Second guy, too.
I might. I liked him coming out of college. Time with the Patriots, health reasons, never got to play. Extremely talented guy. I think if any of these tackles slip up, or hell, even like if a guard slips up, depending on if he beats out Dozier or Qualve or, however he ends up on the depth chart, because he's a versatile individual, I think most likely, though, tackle, probably right tackle as of right now. So to say if Brandon Shell slips up, that guy could slide in, I think, almost immediately. Because the talent he showed in college, I think, what did he end up going in? Third round?
Third round.
Third round. And his medicals weren't great coming out of college. Obviously, the reason he didn't play in New England was because of the medicals on top of it. So I know the Patriots are known for taking risks on guys, Aaron Hernandez being the big one. But even with the medicals, they thought he was worth a third-round pick. I know a lot of guys had him as a late first-round pick, a guy who was going to slip in, most likely, though, to be like an early to mid-round second. That's a talent that you just don't pick up off the waiver wire every day. So that's a dark horse who I really like on the roster who could slide into a starting role if somebody slips up. And then the second one, Ben, I honestly don't know who your guy is. Sorry if I'm cucking you again. Dimitri Flowers, fullback. Oh, yeah. I'm sorry, Ben. I took both of yours. Well, at least we're on the same page once. Another guy who I really like coming out of college, really productive, not necessarily stat-wise, but just as a guy who does the dirty work. I think the comparison we always make for the Jets, I'm spacing on the linebacker's name, Ben. Help me out. You always make the comparison.
Brian Thomas.
I knew it was Thomas. Brian Thomas, obviously, completely different positions, but just as a person you can compare to doing the dirty work, I think the Jets...
I feel like the obvious answer there was like Tony Richardson or something. Go with the
that would have been much better.
Tommy Bohannon, maybe?
Tony Bohannon?
Tommy? It was Tommy.
Or Tommy Bohannon.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you say Bahama?
Tommy Bohannon, drafted by Lord John Idzik, by the way.
It was actually a solid pick. The kid made the Pro Bowl last year.
Hey,
yeah,
listen, Idzik had a plan. That's all I'm saying. John Idzik had a plan, and it included Pro Bowler Tommy Bohannon.
It also included Sam Darnold in trading picks for him, so, I mean, it worked out perfectly. But guy who has good hands, is a good blocker, who ran a pro system at Oklahoma. Obviously, they had a lot of talent there, and their O-line was pretty decent. I think Joe Blewett talked about that a little bit, the talent that, Baker Mayfield had around him. So I don't want to say that, he was responsible for keeping Baker Mayfield safe, but he did a lot of the work. I mean, that was a guy who I was really surprised when undrafted. I think that's just because of his position. I think he's an individual you can see step into he'll primarily play fullback because I think the Jets are starting to get into that more. We saw it more with Lawrence Thomas, who I think will get cut last year. But kind of like an H-back role or a halfback role, whatever you want to call it. Just a guy who...
Yeah, no, you were right, H-back.
Yeah, just a guy at any moment could go from a blocker if you want to, get out of the play. You can flank him out. You can line him up somewhere, and he's a reliable pass catcher. I mean, that's rare to have, and that's rare to go undrafted. So he's a dark horse for me because I don't think that's something Lawrence Thomas offers. Lawrence Thomas did a good job blocking last year. I think he did a lot of really good things switching over to his offensive line, but he can't pass catch, consistently. I know didn't he catch a touchdown last year against, the Dolphins?
No, he almost did. He caught one, trucked a guy, and then tripped it the 5.
Okay. Well, he's not a reliable pass catcher. I think that's fair to say as a defensive lineman when you have the confirmed reliable guy all-around fullback in Dimitri Flowers, who I was surprised we got.
Yeah, so my answers were Antonio Garcia and Dimitri Flowers, and really quickly on them, I'll give 2 other answers as well. But, yeah, I think you're looking at 2 guys that the Jets were able to pick up that could theoretically be long-term starters, that at the end of 2018 you could be looking at as, hey, there's your starting guard, and hey, there's your starting fullback. Flowers, I think, will be the starting fullback this year. Yeah, he's an H-back. He's a great blocker. If you watched any of Baker Mayfield's film, it's pretty impossible not to notice this guy and the impact he had. I think he'll be integral to Sam Darnold as much as a fullback can be. I like Lawrence Thomas a lot. And, I'm looking forward to that battle in training camp, but I just think Dimitri Flowers just gives you a lot more. He's as good of a blocker, and he's faster, more athletic. It is his natural position. He can catch the ball. And he's almost kind of a tight end in some ways as we talk about him in an H-back role. So that was undoubtedly the best undrafted free agent signing, but I could even argue he was probably my third favorite pick that the Jets had. I'd probably go Darnold 1, Nickerson 2, and then him. And that's not a discredit to Shepard, Herndon, or Fatukasi. I just am a big Dimitri Flowers fan, and I was glad that the Jets were able to swoop him up. The other guy, Antonio Garcia, anytime you can swoop up a guy who was a third-round pick last year, especially for the Patriots, he has some bad meds, but, I remember Jay Ajayi falling in the draft because of his bad medical.
Bone on bone in his knees. I can't believe he got drafted when he got drafted. I mean, clearly it worked out for both the Dolphins and the Eagles, but he had horrible medicals.
Yeah, but I'm saying my point is on Antonio Garcia, it was really a no-risk, high-reward type of move. But, okay, two other dark horses, and then we have one other, and we'll get out of here. Or I'll give Scott Mason master of the plug, so that sounds bad. An opportunity. But two dark horses. I'll start with Clive Walford. I think this is a guy nobody talks about. When we picked him up, people talked about it for a day, and then everybody just moved on to Chris Herndon and Jordan Leggett. But Clive Walford is probably the favorite to be the starting tight end at this point, unless one of the young guys can show. I mean, I almost don't want it because I'd rather see, Leggett and Herndon kind of fight it out and be, have the two dynamic, young, athletic tight ends. But Clive Walford was a starting tight end for the Raiders. He is still fairly young. I like what he brings. He is a veteran. I don't know. I think he can contribute to this offense. It's going to be a question as to if he makes the roster because he's good enough to be the starter, but I could also see the Jets rolling with the two young guys. I think Tomlinson is going to probably be a lock due to his blocking. I think that the Jets have learned their lesson. During the 2009-2010 seasons, they had Ben Hartsock. They had other blocking tight ends, and it just shows how big it is, especially in the goal line. You want a guy you can put in there as an extra blocker that you're confident in. If Herndon and Leggett or Walford can't really show that, then you got to keep him, especially since he's good at it. So I think Tomlinson's a lock, and I think you're probably keeping two more. So then it's like, you might just roll with the two young guys. You drafted Leggett 2 years ago, you drafted Leggett last year, you drafted Herndon this year, roll with them. But Walford is probably the best tight end on the roster right now. So if he makes the roster, you're looking at your starter, and you should be confident with him. I believe he's 26? I want to make sure I'm right on this.
He's fairly young, and he was one of the John Gruden purge guys. Gruden.
Yeah, he's 26.
He got rid of Marquette King, Clive Walford, and I believe one other guy, and then he went and traded for Christian Hackenberg. So John Gruden, officially an idiot.
We'll save out. But, he was a third-round pick in 2015, had 3 touchdowns 2 years ago, and then he wasn't used at all last year. So, look, I think he could be a starter on this team for sure. I'm curious to see what the Jets do at that tight end position because that's kind of tricky. You can either, if you have to keep the blocker, and then you want to keep the best tight end, which is probably Walford, and then so could you choose between the young guys, or the Jets say, hey, look, we're probably not going anywhere this year. Let's just see these young guys. Barring that one of those young tight ends is worse, barring Leggett is just pretty bad, I think that they might cut Walford. But I'm not sure. I think he can make the roster, and if he does, you're looking at a starting tight end, and a very solid starting tight end at that. And then last dark horse, I'll go Kevin Minter. I think this is a guy, Joe, hinted at that he could be nipping at the heels of Lee.
Absolutely.
I don't know about that, but he definitely could towards the end of the year. But I definitely think as far as a coverage linebacker goes, I'm glad that Bowles was able to bring him in. He's a guy that played in Bowles' defense, and he was a guy that was a bit of a hot commodity a few years ago. He's not that old. Great coverage linebacker. I'm very happy that the Jets were to bring him in. So he's a true dark horse. Walford we'll see, but I think he's a guy that's either going to make the team and be the starter or not make the team at all. All right, final one. I'll give Scott a chance to plug some TOJ content, and then we'll get out of here. Under the radar, which is pretty similar to Dark Horse, but I guess the way to interpret this is, Dark Horse, we were kind of going with guys who are, Scott, you mentioned guys who are barely clinging to if they'll make the roster. Kyle, you and I both picked guys that were that were kind of off the street pickups. So I guess under the radar, you want a guy that. I'm trying to classify this, but I guess a guy that's going to make the team that people aren't thinking of. I guess is the way to Is the only way I can classify it. I don't really.
Not how I interpreted it.
You can interpret it anyway. I'm just trying to make it different than Dark Horse 1 and Dark Horse 2. Scott, you.
Yeah, this was one that was kind of weird for me because I didn't really see all that much of a differentiation between this and the Dark Horse category. I think the best one for me here would be Flowers, just because he's kind of a – I mean, really, I could sit here and talk about it, but you guys both broke down Flowers pretty well. He was a guy that should have been drafted and wasn't, and in all reality, he's the best fullback on the team, I think. Lawrence Thomas, Ben, I think you said he's an inconsistent pass catcher. I think that's being very charitable. He's a pretty terrible pass catcher, and he's gigantic, man. He's like 300 pounds. I don't know that that's going to be able to be sustained.
I'll say this, though. Lawrence Thomas could theoretically make the roster as a defensive lineman because I liked him as a defensive lineman. He moved to fullback out of necessity. So
yeah, I mean, who knows with that? It's possible. But I just feel like Flowers is a guy that could be an under-the-radar guy that could make some sort of impact and surprise some people in training camp because, like you guys said, he really does a lot of different things well. He can catch, he can block, and especially with Sam Darnold back there, he could be one of those security blanket type guys that you could look to. And if you throw in the fact that you don't necessarily know what you're getting out of the tight end, so you take that area of security blanket away. It's not like you're going to have somebody like even ASJ, who was a bit of a security blanket at times for Josh McCown. You could maybe see Flowers in that role a little bit. And to throw on what you were saying, Ben, with the tight end, I may be crazy, but I think Eric Tomlinson is going to be the starter. So Flowers is the guy that I would pick for this.
All right, Kyle.
Okay, so when I read Under the Radar, when I think radar, I usually think guys that like we picked up or drafted. Like I don't think of guys who are like already on the roster. So I'm excluding like probably a solid 35 guys from this. So Under the Radar, I'm not going to go Terrell Pryor. You guys know I would have went Terrell Pryor if I didn't think
I thought that's where you're going, obviously.
No, I don't feel like getting crucified right now. I really don't. I'm tired.
No, you saw a pick for Under the Radar.
No, I'm going Nathan Shepard because I feel like that's a pick a lot of people aren't like it. People not in the Jets community aren't giving a lot of knowledge to. They look at the Jets draft class, and I think the two picks right now that people are looking at are Sam Darnold and then because of PFF, Perry Nickerson, which I think is unfortunate because he's probably like our third or fourth best draft pick. But Nathan Shepard, I think, is a guy who is really under the radar because he's going to come in and he's going to end up probably being third on the depth chart as defensive end behind Henry Anderson, and then whoever's going to get the second starting spot. It depends on how we use the guys. Because if Leo goes to the more defensive end role and we put like McClendon as like the full-time defensive tackle, which is a possibility, I can ramble on this for an hour. It ends up how guys are going to be shifted around into the defense and stuff because we don't know how they're going to use Henry Anderson and don't know how to use Shepard. But nonetheless, I think he's a guy who's going to come in and be productive as a rookie because he's a grown man already. A lot of these guys, they come into the NFL, and I think Joe Blewett was talking about it earlier with Perry Nickerson, being 175. He hasn't hit an NFL weight room yet. Nathan Shepard is a 24? Is that how old he is? 24-year-old man. I mean, he's a big boy.
Canadian Thanos.
Yeah, he is Canadian Thanos. I mean, snap away, guys, you're going to get turned to dust. I mean, to make a little Thanos reference there. He is no longer a child like a lot of these guys are coming into the NFL because, they're 21-year-old kids who, they've been eating unhealthy in college, blah, 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 haven't been working out correctly, little sleep, focused on other things.
Okay, well, but so is Nathan Shepard.
No, I think
Nathan Shepard is a man who's had to work for what he has, but
completely different than a college football. He's not coming from I
understand that part. He's coming from Fort Hays State. Yeah, he's had. Yeah. I'm not debating that. I'm just saying Nathan Shepard hasn't been in an NFL workroom. Nathan Shepard hasn't had an NFL job in security. Nathan Shepard hasn't had the dietary monitoring that NFL coach. You know what I'm saying? Like Nathan Shepard hasn't been afforded these opportunities as well. I get what you're saying that he's ahead.
Of the curve.
A little older, and he's had to go through a tougher path. But, yeah, no, I get
Which
that.
I think is a big part of the process for a lot of these young guys into the NFL. I think the Chris Carter thing from a couple years ago with the rookie symposium where he was telling guys, get a fall guy and stuff like that. I feel like that's something that a lot of these rookies may need because they're growing up. And now they have, Sam Darnold's going to get $30 million. They're going to have that sitting in his bank account by the end of the week. I mean, not every rookie gets that, but it's the most money they're ever going to have in their lives for most of these guys. And I think Nathan Shepard, he's an adult. Bottom line is what I'm trying to say. I feel like that's something that you don't get a lot of in the NFL locker room. Not a lot of tread on the tires, but old enough to be mature, step into a role, don't have to worry about most of the off-the-field stuff. He's built as can be. He was working all those odd jobs, a steel worker and stuff. I mean, the guy is he's ready to go into the NFL and step into that role almost immediately, which, as I keep saying, is rare. So I think he's going to be productive. Him and Henry Anderson, I think they're going to rotate a lot throughout the year opposite of Leo. And I just think that's an under-the-radar guy who only Jets people have been talking about.
Yeah, I have quite a few guys here, but I'm not going to go in depth to save some time. Henry Anderson was an obvious guy for me. I think he's a guy not too many people are talking about, but I think he's going to be the most consistently good defensive end that Leonard Williams has had since his rookie year. And I think that's going to help him out a lot. And Kyle, you referred to that earlier. I'm saying he now doesn't have a guy who's going to be taking plays off like Muhammad Wilkerson. I think Henry Anderson is going to be a nice long-term starter for the Jets for a bit. David Bass, who was the leading pass rusher on this team last year, I think he's a guy that's really going to work his way into the rotation. Hopefully, kind of like I mentioned with Lorenzo Mauldin, can keep developing himself. But right now, he's probably ahead of all the other outside linebackers to start against opposite Jordan Jenkins. It's between him and Josh Martin for sure. And then I guess Dylan Donahue and Lorenzo Mauldin are fighting from behind, so you can use those guys. And then the last two, it both kind of comes down to, under the radar, it comes down to kick returning. The Jets don't have a kick returner right now. Last year, Ardarius Stewart handled it towards the end of the year. Well, he's suspended for the first 2 games. The Jets brought in Andre Roberts. We'll see if he makes the roster. He was a very productive. He was a solidly productive kick returner. He's going to be a guy who can get you 25, 30 yards, maybe a touchdown as a kick returner. But the Jets also drafted Trenton Cannon, and I wonder if he'll make the team. I think at the very worst, Cannon goes practice squad. But he's a guy I'm intrigued with, especially with kick returning, just because of his athletic ability. He's coming from a very small school, so I'm not sure. Was he D2? Was Cannon D2, Kyle?
Trenton Cannon?
Yeah.
I think he's D2.
All right. Well, I don't know. He came from a very small school. So my point is
I'm trying to remember what school he came from.
I don't even know the name. So my point is those 2 kick returners, whoever wins the job, I think is who sticks. I think, the struggle Cannon faces is, are they going to take 4 running backs? I mean, I guess so, and then you're cutting Thomas Rawls. I'm not sure. And then Andre Roberts has a bigger advantage because of, Ardarius Stewart being suspended for 2 games. It's the same position. Really, I would say there's 5 receivers that are probably going to make the roster at this point, and you probably want to carry 6, sometimes 7, and so I think Andre Roberts has an easier path to the roster. But those are 3 or 4 guys that I think could really make an under-the-radar boost to this Jets team. Andre Roberts and Trenton Cannon as kick returners, one or the other. David Bass as a pass rusher, and then Henry Anderson as your starting defensive end I think is going to be huge. All right, that'll do it for us. We'll go ahead and pass the mic to Scott Mason from the Play Like a Jet podcast to give some plugs for the Turn on the Jets digital network. My phone is dead, so I do not have the music unless Kyle wants to grab it.
Yeah, I'll do it. What's the name of it again?
NFL Primetime, whatever. It's just one of the...
By the way, Virginia State is where Trenton Cannon went, boys.
Yeah,
it's D2.
NFL highlight music or something like that.
Yeah, I got it.
Pop up. Yeah, there you go. All right,
you ready,
Mason,
Scott?
the mic is yours.
Yeah, just don't blast it into my ear like you always do, Kyle.
Boom, roasted.
What was that? I couldn't hear you over the music, man. Oh, damn it, that's an ad. Oh, I almost just gave Jim Bean a free ad. Oh, wait, it's hooked up to my headphones. All right, now we're good. Are we?
Really killing it, Kyle.
Oh.
Oh, my God. Kyle, geez.
I turned it down.
All the way.
Bring that down a little bit, Kyle Fahey. Holy smoke. Wow.
All right, there you go.
Okay, that's better. There we go. All right, so let's talk about what we got going on at Turn on the Jets Digital. We launched a new one this week, and I'll get to that in a second. It's called What's Your Point? What happened? Did we lose the music?
What the heck, Kyle? I was going to go get some water, and then I heard the...
Hey, I muted myself not to interrupt Scott. Forgot I was playing the music.
Okay. I was confused. The music started anyway.
I was trying to be nice.
So let's talk about the newest podcast that Turn on the Jets Digital, and it's called What's Your Point? With your buddy, Paulie Brzez, who, by the way, shout out to Paulie, who is celebrating his wedding anniversary tonight. He wanted to call in, but his wife thought that it would be a bad idea to call in on his anniversary, so he's going to try to call in next week. There's a reason Paulie's been successfully married for a while, so that's one of the reasons why. He listens to his wife, and so he and Dalton had a great show this week. It was a nice debut where they debate. It's kind of like PTI, but only with Jets topics and a little edgier. Connor Rogers, our boy at TOJ, also at Stick to Football with Matt Miller. He was the special guest judge, and we've got some more really cool special guest judges lined up for the next bunch of shows. I moderate that one, and this, I got to say, the support has been overwhelmingly positive so far. Some great comments from people, so keep it coming. We're going to be having those coming every week. And Michael Nania, who's another one that's got his full-fledged podcast launching very, very soon. What he's been doing is these 8 minutes of intel bits. So it's kind of like a mini pod where he has like a mini series of facts just to kind of get you ready for his podcast that's going to be dedicated to all the information you can handle on the Jets' opponent every single week. This week he has 5 key individual player matchups. If you haven't had a chance to listen to it, go ahead and check it out. It's 8 minutes long, so by the time you take your garbage out to the curb, you're done listening, and it's a really nice and fun, insightful listen. So go ahead and get to that if you can. Joe Caparoso has the Turn on the Jets podcast that will be coming out in the morning tomorrow. It's him and Connor Rogers talking about what to expect here at training camp coming up. So we've got that on the way, and that is the flagship show. So listen, Joe, Connor, 25 minutes. What else do you have to do that's better than that on your morning commute on Thursday? So that'll be available for you. You got this podcast, obviously, where you can call in and have Kyle explain to you how Juju Smith-Schuster is apparently the biggest star in football because he has more Twitter followers than Tom Brady or something. That's one of the things.
He's a pretty big star.
Sure. And you can listen, Juju Smith-Schuster, very nice receiver, but it depends on the definition of star. Anyway, you can call in and debate those topics and whatever else you want with Ben and Kyle every week. And I love calling in and talking with you guys, even if sometimes Kyle drives me a little bit nuts with his Terrell Pryor stuff. I actually just got a text message from Joe Blewett who said, is Kyle still going on and on about Terrell Pryor? So make sure you call in and tell Kyle that he's wrong about Terrell Pryor every week. Joe Blewett did that earlier today, and if you haven't had a chance, make sure you check out Joe Blewett doing TOJ Film Room. The beauty of that show is it's one of the few podcasts that you really should watch the video because there's so much great film that Joe breaks down. And you guys know because you just had him on, he does Jets film like virtually nobody else can. Just the way that he can explain each play and the detail behind it, it really warrants watching it on YouTube. The debut last week was very successful on the YouTube side. We want to get the audio going as well. I know it's better video form, but sometimes you want to listen when you're on your way to work or at the gym or something like that. So subscribe to the TOJ Film Room on iTunes. Go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube channel right now. It's Turn on the Jets TV. And by the way, I was on the first 2 episodes this week. We talked about it before. It was the top 25 players on the Jets. Joe and I ranked them, and Joe used the film to either back up his points or try to smack down my points when he disagreed with me. So make sure you subscribe to Joe both in audio and video form. Play Like a Jet. We've got a brand new episode coming out on Friday, and that is going to be a continuation of our series with Albert Breer on the road to Sam Darnold. This has been a really well-received series so far. It's actually broken all of our download records. I want to thank anybody and everybody who has listened to it. I think it's been our best series yet, and that's why so many people have enjoyed it. It's telling the inside story of how Sam Darnold wound up with the Jets, that 3-year journey. If you haven't listened to the first few parts yet, Part 5 is going to drop on Friday, but it's well worth listening to. I am a little biased, I'll admit, but certainly well worth a listen, I think. And then Daryl Slater your old friend, or as Kyle would say, friend of the show.
Friend of the podcast.
Friend of the podcast, Daryl Slater, is going to be joining me for daily training camp recaps on Play Like a Jet. So we'll have those for you. They'll be nice for you to listen to when you unwind at night or when you're driving to work in the morning. Joe Blewett will be at Jets training camp a bunch of times for us as well, so hopefully he can call you guys with some reports of some more, I guess you would say, filmy type recaps. Daryl's going to be giving us recaps kind of along the lines of what you get from a beat reporter. Joe Blewett is a different beast altogether when it comes to that stuff. So a lot of things going on with Turn on the Jets Digital right now, and really excited for everything, including Ira, who's going to be starting in just about a week or two. We're still kind of nailing down a start date, but Ira from Staten Island, the legendary voice of the New York airwaves, is going to be on Turn on the Jets Digital. We'll have a weekly show where people can ask him questions. He'll give his thoughts on the Jets. He'll have a classic story from his years on the road with the team. Everything you can think of, he'll be talking about it on the show. So just so much to deal with. Oh, and I forgot this too, by the way. On our Instagram, boys, I don't know if you had a chance to see this yet, but Joe Caporoso goes on with another one of our podcasts that is now affiliated with us, which is Paul Eston Jr., or as he's called sometimes, Boy Green. He's got his own podcast, The Jet Zone, and every week on his ESPN Drive Time Sports Show, he has our fearless leader, Joe Caporoso, on. And now every week you're going to be able to listen to that and watch it actually in video form on our Instagram Live. You can go to it right now. It's at @TurnOnTheJets_IG. If you haven't subscribed to our Instagram yet, go ahead and do that, and then that way you'll be able to get all of that video and all the other great content. I got to give a quick shout-out to our boy Greg Armstrong on that. Boy, has he been doing a phenomenal job on our Instagram page. I really think Greg is just really, going above and beyond. And now we've got that weekly feature as well where Joe will have the video of him and Paul talking on Paul's afternoon drive radio show in Syracuse. And perhaps we'll get a run-in appearance by Ben once Ben starts at Syracuse in the fall. Who knows? So one of these days we'll be watching that on the Instagram Live, and as Paul's talking to Joe, Ben will run in with a chair and hit Paul in the back of the head or something and take over the segment. But that's everything we have going on. We have Anderson. Yeah, there you go. Just hit him in the back of the head and wearing a Robbie Anderson shirt like the Jets version of the NWO. But yeah, so we have so much going on. And
I thought he was going to say NWA. I was like,
No.
That's what I thought he was saying. Do it first.
No, not NWA. But we have so much going on. Listen, it's 2018. We're in the digital age. We got a lot of great digital properties, including the website, turnonthejets.com, all the podcasts, the video stuff at our YouTube channel, on Instagram. It really is coming together where we're becoming a full-service one-stop shop for Jets news, information, and content. So, boys, I'm really glad you're along for the ride. I'm looking forward to talking to you again next week. And listen, Ben, do yourself a favor. Try not to think too hard about the star thing because it's going to wrap around and eat your brain at a certain point.
I will try, Scott. I'm doing my best. I'm not sure if I'm going to make it, though. So if I'm not here next week, you'll know what happened.
Oh, wait a second. One last thing. Fahey, don't you and Armstrong have a Instagram? Yeah. What's going on with that?
I was gonna plug that. I knew you weren't going to say anything because it hasn't been like we got permission from Joe to do it. We finished the first episode. I finished editing it this morning. I had to cut a couple of the jokes that we made. It's the way you described the way you described Dalbin and Polly's podcast, where it's like PTI except a little more edgy. Imagine that except on crack. Like I'm not filtered, Greg's not filtered. It's our faces. It's like imagine like just mafia members going back and forth and basically just gun pointed to our heads, just waiting to see who's going to flinch first. That's just basically me and Greg going back and forth at it. And it's just like it will get more football related when obviously we have more football to talk about. But it's like it's PTI with sports and some pop culture in there, depending on how big the news is. Like we talked a little bit about Shark Week and Reeves' retirement and stuff. But I think that's dropping either late tonight or early tomorrow morning, just depending on when we find best for numbers and stuff.
There you go. So more added content and even more reason for you to subscribe to our Instagram at @TurnOnTheJets_IG. So Fahey is branching out. I don't know, Ben. I think next you're going to have to start your own Instagram TV show with.
Kyle can just do that permanently. We'll just bring a nanny on there.
There it is. There you go. Ben is auditioning new co-hosts.
Yeah, with job needed. Thank you. All right.
We're gonna go on Indeed.com.
Kyle, stop. Scott?
No, Ben. No, I'm not letting that one slip by. Jobs needed. That's what he said. Like, help wanted would be what you're supposed to, like, what you were going for.
I knew it.
That is
I couldn't think of it.
Of privilege in Ben's life.
All right, you got me there. I'll give you that. I don't think that was privilege as much as me being tongue-tied. But whatever.
Tongue-tied? Tongue-tied is like saying hippo wrong or something, or saying Tommy Bahama instead of Tommy Bohannon.
Okay, you want to get into Rising Star again? I just couldn't think of the word, so I said it. I just said what came to mind. I know, help wanted was obviously. All right, sorry. Scott, thank you for hanging with us.
Of course, boys. It's always a pleasure.
We're seeing a therapist. We're getting through our issues.
That therapist killed herself a while ago.
Okay, all right. Scott, thanks so much, man.
Thanks, boys.
All right. God, what was her name again?
I don't know. I made a fake therapist.
All right.
Mt.Rushmore?
Yeah, Kyle. I'll give you the baton on this one.
You're not doing it?
I'll help you out. I should have just said I'll give you the running stick on this one.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, so Mt.Rushmore, I think, been fairly successful. I think I had 2 people tweet me about it. We'll take it. All right.
Huge.
It's the off
numbers.
All right. We'll take. Listen, and it always comes at the end of. Damn it, Kyle. It's always towards the end of the show. So I mean, not everybody listens through. We're at 2.5 hours now for a podcast. So like,
I listen beginning, middle, and end. Like I'll watch the intro. If there's an interview, I'll listen to that. I'll go to of general podcasting. I'll go to the middle, and then I'll listen to the close.
Yeah, I don't really do that. I usually just listen to the funny segments. But so Mt.Rushmore, we've been doing it for a couple of weeks now. Going to make it consistent. With training camp starting, well, at least when we're recording this, starting basically a day from now. We're going to go over the training camp cliches, the headlines that like to be pushed by beat writers and stuff. There's always, like, you can play bingo with it, basically, like the certain headlines that are going to come out. There are some examples, but I don't want to give Ben any ideas. So, Ben, do you want first pick, or do you want me to get back-to-back?
Sure. I'm going to be honest. My creativity is going to be a little obviously I'm having trouble thinking of words right now, and I did not prepare for this whatsoever.
I did. I'm so ready for this.
You're basing this off of the common cliches of that Jets beat writers have whilst covering training camp, correct?
Not necessarily Jets, but in general.
Are we doing so we're going back and forth?
No, I think we're gonna do Snake.
Okay.
That's why I asked.
I honestly don't know if I'm going to come up with 4 cliches, but I will.
Okay, I have 8 ready to go. So.
Okay, well, you might have to help me out because I was not prepared for the segment. And all right, I'm tired. We're coming up on 3 hours here, Kyle. So okay. So first thing, training camp cliche. Shape of his life is the obvious one. Brandon Marshall coming in, losing some weight, Todd Bowles' diet. Lorenzo Malden gaining some weight. It's always about their physique coming in, and I guarantee you will hear some tweets about this, about some guy, changing his body or whatever, but it all comes down to he's always in the best shape of his life. Kyle, all you.
Yeah. All right. That was the easy first pick. Probably the best one, honestly, the one we're going to see the most. So I have back-to-back here. It doesn't really matter the order. I'm gonna go with my first one. Guy with a lot on the line. Just fill-in name, has a lot on the line. We get that every year in NFL training camps. I guess specifically with the Jets this year. Who's Darren Lee? Darren Lee has a lot on the line. If he's gonna perform or not. Not to single out anybody, but so we're definitely gonna see that a lot this year. Second pick, the undrafted free agent. that has been wowing everybody. There's just always that one kid that just slipped through somehow. And, he's catching everything, apparently. He's catching everything. So always that one guy, and then he does jack shit in reality. But
Robbie Anderson kind of broke the curve on that one.
He is the one exception to that.
I have a few here. I could think of two right now. One of the best stories you'll find. You'll hear that. You'll hear that a lot. Nathan Shepard, Teddy Bridgewater. You'll hear that in the next few days. Just how hard he's worked, his journey through. You'll also hear that with an undrafted free agent, especially when you get around week 2 of preseason. You just starts to come up. And then I don't know if this is much a cliche of general training camp or as much as Jets training camp, but there's going to be that day where it pours down raining and the defense just absolutely dominates the offense and all the quarterbacks are trash and everybody's dropping balls and stuff.
Damn it.
And it's just
That's
all
a good
defensive. So it's the defensive day.
Yep. You get back-to-back here.
I already did. I just gave you 2.
Oh, you did too? Okay.
Yeah, that's where you'll find that.
I thought you were just rambling about one. Okay, so I'll do 2 then. That was a good one on the defensive one because I was going to steal that one. Let's look at my list. The guy who's looking to rebound. Always that guy who had a down year, maybe didn't live up to expectations. He's looking to rebound. He obviously has the talent. He's looking to rebound. I think the best example would be Leonard Williams there. So there's always that guy looking to rebound.
Whoa, it doesn't need a rebound. Leonard Williams had a down
year.
Last year.
He had a down year.
Yeah, but I don't know if it's a down. He just had an okay year. He's kind of just plateaued. I wouldn't say he's a down year. He would still start on the majority of NFL teams as defensive lineman.
He would start on every NFL team that doesn't have Aaron Donald.
Yeah, literally every. Well, yeah, every team. Yeah, every team outside the Rams.
Because Ndamukong Suh was also on that team.
Yeah.
So, my last one. This is interesting. The wide receiver that's making a name for himself. Always that one. This one specifically for the Jets. Kind of similar to the undrafted free agent, but that one I always kind of keep separate because every year there's that wide receiver, David Nelson, with Chancey Stuckey, guys like that who are just oh man, he's getting open on everything and he's beating everybody. He's catching everything. There's always a wide receiver, and I think Chad Hansen's going to be it this year.
I don't mean to be a dick here.
Yeah.
But I'm going to be. This was your list, buddy, and I don't know if those are your top 4 picks there. I feel like I've in the 3 minutes I've thought about this have come up with some more. Tweet us your thoughts at Jets Nation. Just tweet us at the Jet Take. My last one, I'll go rookie quarterback having an amazing day. He is on fire. He cannot miss a throw. You'll see those tweets. Sam Darnold will have one day. It might be after that really horrendous day where he just won't have an incompletion. He'll have on fire, touchdown. Jets Twitter's freaking out. Is it because he's wearing a glove on his left hand? Who knows? And then, the next day he's fine. Average those 2 interceptions.
Yeah.
Those was my Mt.Rushmore.
I thought of a good one.
All right, we'll give it. Who cares a crap?
Yeah, this doesn't count towards our list. I just lost it. Son of a bitch. All right, we're ending it here.
Really?
That's
wow.
it.
All right, that was a weak ending. All right, guys. Well, thank you for listening to another episode of the Jet Take. Jeez. It was a fun episode indeed. Joe Blewett is a great guest to have on, breaking down the film. Had a nice long discussion with him, and then Scott Mason going through what's been firing through Jets Twitter at the moment. I guess the last thing to add is the next time we'll be talking, we'll have a few training camp practices to discuss. So we'll actually have things to discuss. We won't have to make up crappy content. That was some self-deprecation right there.
Good job, Ben.
Thank you.
Thanks for shitting on us.
Oh, wow. Okay, I didn't mean it like that. We'd just like to thank you so much for listening to the show. Our listens have stayed pretty great throughout the off-season, although Kyle and I have wavered at times on the uploading, the past few weeks it's been, once every 2 weeks and whatnot. But, part of that's just due to the lack of content, which is a bit of a good thing because you don't want too much content in this period because that means people are getting suspended or getting injured. So, anyways, we'd just like to thank you guys for sticking with us through another off season. We're really excited to get into 2018. We're just really looking forward to continuing to grow. We've just grown so much these past few months. We're looking forward to getting some pretty cool guests on in the next few months and growing with our fan base. So thank you for sticking with us with another full off season. This is our third off season on the Jet Take. We went from the Ryan Fitzpatrick saga to Hackenberg versus Bryce Petty, and now we're here, Sam Darnold, Teddy Bridgewater to Josh McCown. Very excited about it. We'll leave you with the best chant in the National Football League. You can follow us at the Jet Take on Twitter. You can find our podcast anywhere you listen to podcasts: iTunes, Spotify, SoundCloud, Stitcher, iHeartRadio. I've had actually two people this week message me, well, do you need to just be on iTunes? No, you do not. You can, anywhere you listen to podcasts, no matter if you have an Android, an iPhone, whatever, you can just find us. Just go to, even YouTube. We're on YouTube. So we're all over the place. But also, Turn on the Jets. You can also find us there. TurnOnTheJets.com. Our podcast is up there as well. As I said, we will leave you with the best chant in the National Football League. Go Jets. We made it through another offseason. We will talk to you guys next Wednesday with some good content.
Let's go get a goddamn snack.
Okay, wow.